we're gonna make sure we're gonna change the title here, and it looks like it. Okay, excellent. Are people seeing that? There we go. Wonderful. Okay. So, hello everyone. And just to start out this VOD, since we're just going live on YouTube over here, we have been streaming on Twitch for a little bit, but we are going live for the reading portion of this stream. If you're interested in catching me for the other content that I do, which is mainly cozy chatting and traditional ASMR, we do the full streams over on Twitch. But for the reading portion, we're sharing that over here on YouTube, and this is something we've been looking forward to. It is reading more Edgar Allan Poe, which we do every year around this time. This is the third year that we've been reading Poe. Let me just adjust my gain a little bit. Okay, so these are stories that we haven't yet read on stream. Last year we did, we kind of kept it thematic, and we did like the Poe's Spooky Brides stories, and we read Berenice and Morella and Ligia and Eleonora. Those were fun. This one, they will not be as thematically linked as that, but they are all coming from this Tales of Horror. And probably we will also be rereading The Raven, because of course we should. All right. Now, I don't think, maybe you guys can remember, I don't think we ever ended up reading Metzengerstein, which is the one about the horse, right? And we haven't read The Murders in the Rue Morgue. We can read Annabel Lee. Yeah, so I'm thinking of doing Metzengerstein and Murders in the Rue Morgue, The Imp of the Perverse. Hi, JC. Let me switch over to the multi-chat widget in OBS. There we go. Now I'll be able to see both Twitch and YouTube comments. Oh, Jane, thank you. And A Descent into the Maelstrom seems promising. And The Devil in the Belfry. You're Calthorg and you're watching this. Well, hello. Is it okay to call you Nick, though? Welcome in. Now, anyone that knows Poe, if you want to jump in and say, I want this one first, please feel free. Otherwise, I will pick at random. Quantum Weasel, hello. Also, yes, I should explain for anyone who's maybe just watching this over on YouTube, I'm doing the clicking noise because it has become habit because I do so much ASMR over on Twitch. It is completely just automatic at this point. Metzengerstein is the best of the lot. Well, should we start with it or end with it then? Let's start with it. It's the first one in the book, so let's read it. Let's do it. Metzengerstein. Horror and fatality have been stalking abroad in all ages. Why then give a date to the story I have to tell? Let it suffice to say that at the period of which I speak, there existed, in the interior of Hungary, a settled, although hidden, belief in the doctrines of the metempsychosis, Of the doctrines themselves, that is, of their falsity or of their probability, I say nothing. I assert, however, that much of our incredulity, as La Bruyère says of all our unhappiness, vient de ne pouvoir être seul. But there are some points in the Hungarian superstition which were fast verging to absurdity. They, the Hungarians, differed very essentially from their Eastern authorities. For example, the soul, said the former, I give the words of an acute and intelligent Parisian, ne demeure qu'une seule fois dans un corps sensible. Au reste, un cheval, un chien, un homme même, n'est que la ressemblance peu tangible de ces animaux. Let me read the proper translation instead of giving you an awkward one myself. Resides only once within a tangible body. For the rest, a horse, a dog, even a man, it is but a vague likeness of these animals. Hi, Dot, hello. The families of Berlifitzing and Metzengerstein had been at variance for centuries. Never before were two houses so illustrious, mutually embittered by hostility so deadly. The origin of this enmity seems to be found in the words of an ancient prophecy. A lofty name shall have a fearful fall when, as the rider over his horse, the mortality of Metzengerstein shall triumph over the immortality of Berlifitzing. To be sure, the words themselves had little or no meaning, but more trivial causes have given rise, and that no long while ago, to consequences equally eventful. Besides, the estates, which were contiguous, had long exercised a rival influence in the affairs of a busy government. Moreover, near neighbors are seldom friends, and the inhabitants of the castle Berlifitzing might look, from their lofty buttresses, into the very windows of the palace Metzengerstein. Least of all had the more than feudal magnificence, thus discovered, a tendency to allay the irritable feelings of the less ancient and less wealthy Berlifitzings. What wonder, then, that the words, however silly, of that prediction should have succeeded in setting and keeping at variance two families already predisposed to quarrel by every instigation of hereditary jealousy. The prophecy seemed to imply, if it implied anything, a final triumph on the part of the already more powerful house, and was of course remembered with the more bitter animosity by the weaker and less influential. Bowman, thank you for the raid. Welcome in, Dreamers. Hello. Bowman, thank you so much for the raid. And Hurricane, thank you for the follow. Oh my goodness. Just these two giant estates right next to each other like that. Hello, welcome in. Oh my goodness. Bowman, thank you so much. You guys over on Twitch, make sure that you are following Bowman Dean. He is just absolutely superb at ASMR. Oh my goodness, you will get all the tingles. So many creative ASMR triggers over there. Stream was fun, just reading from Storybook from 1909. Last story by H.C. Anderson. Wonderful. Wonderful. Hi, Timmers. Hi, Lily. Dungeon Darkness. Hello, hello. Oh my goodness. You guys have come in on us just starting the first story of our night of reading from Poe. Which obviously we have been looking forward to. We are starting with a story called Metzengerstein. which I've not read before. We are also multi-streaming this section over to YouTube. Now, of course, I would never tell any of you to go to YouTube instead of Twitch. However, if any of you have the capacity, both personally and technologically, to open a YouTube an extra window, then that will help me with my watch hours. And if you feel like dropping a follow, this is kind of my next big project that I'm jumping into, so although it's very sparse on the content at the moment, I am planning for that to change very soon. So, good night, Ilk. Sleep well. Did you have horns tonight, Bowman? I do also have bigger horns, but these ones are just so comfy and easy to put on. Alright, so the gist of the story so far is that there's two illustrious houses in Hungary, and they do not get along. No, horns are awesome. Imagine a small Balrog. That sounds amazing. Alright, let's jump back into the story, you guys. Thank you again so much, Bowman. If you're still around when we're done the reading section, I'd love to give you a name trace. I just usually hold off on those during the reading section, but thank you. And of course, feel free to pop out and get all the self-care that you need after you're on stream. Okay. Two households both alike in dignity. I'm really getting those vibes. None good. Aw, are you guys clicking little hearts or something over on YouTube? I'm still learning the, just the program. That's really sweet. Thank you. Oh, alright. Let's pop back in. Okay. Wilhelm, Count Berlifitzing. Berlifitzing? I may be pronouncing this wrong. Count Berlifitzing, although loftily descended, was, at the epoch of this narrative, an infirm and doting old man, remarkable for nothing but an inordinate and inveterate personal antipathy to the family of his rival, and so passionate a love of horses and of hunting that neither bodily infirmity, great age, nor mental incapacity prevented his daily participation in the dangers of the chase. Bowman Dean ASMR over on YouTube. You guys make sure you're dropping a follow for Bowman's YouTube channel as well. Oh my goodness. Frederick, Baron Metzengerstein, was, on the other hand, not yet of age. His father, the minister G, died young. His mother, the Lady Mary, followed him quickly. Frederick was, at that time, in his 18th year. In a city, 18 years are no long period, but in a wilderness, in so magnificent a wilderness as that old principality, the pendulum vibrates with a deeper meaning. From some peculiar circumstances attending the administration of his father, the young baron, at the decease of the former, entered immediately upon his vast possessions. Such estates were seldom held before by a nobleman of Hungary. His castles were without number. The chief in point of splendor and extent was the Palace Metzengerstein. The boundary line of his dominions was never clearly defined, but His principal park embraced a circuit of 50 miles. Hi, JC. Hello. Upon the succession of a proprietor so young, with a character so well known, to a fortune so unparalleled, little speculation was afloat in regard to his probable course of conduct, and indeed, for the space of 3 days, the behavior of the heir out-Heroded Herod, and fairly surpassed the expectations of his most enthusiastic admirers. Shameful debaucheries, flagrant treacheries, unheard of atrocities, gave his trembling vassals quickly to understand that no servile submission on their part, no punctilios of conscience on his own, were thenceforward to prove any security against the remorseless fangs of a petty Caligula. On the night of the 4th day, the stables of the castle Berlifitzing were discovered to be on fire, and the unanimous opinion of the neighborhood added the crime of the incendiary to the already hideous list of the Baron's misdemeanors and enormities. That is such a flex line, right? My castles are without number. But during the tumult occasioned by this occurrence, the young nobleman himself sat apparently buried in meditation, in a vast and desolate upper apartment of the family palace of Metzengerstein. The rich, although faded, tapestry hangings which swung gloomily upon the walls represented the shadowy and majestic forms of 1,000 illustrious ancestors. Here, rich ermined priests and pontifical dignitaries, familiarly seated with the autocrat and the sovereign, put a veto on the wishes of a temporal king, or restrained with the fiat of papal supremacy the rebellious scepter of the arch-enemy. There, the tall, dark statures of the princes Metzengerstein, their muscular war coursers plunging over the carcasses of fallen foes, startled the steadiest nerves with their vigorous expression. And here, again, the voluptuous and swan-like figures of the dames of days gone by floated away in the mazes of an unreal dance to the strains of imaginary melody. But as the Baron listened, or affected to listen, to the gradually increasing uproar in the stables of Berlifitzing, or perhaps pondered upon some more novel, some more decided act of audacity, his eyes were turned unwittingly to the figure of an enormous and unnaturally colored horse, represented in the tapestry as belonging to a Saracen ancestor of the family of his rival. And the horse itself, in the foreground of the design, stood motionless and statue-like, while farther back its discomfited rider perished by the dagger of a Metzengerstein. Hi, Tia, thank you. Tapestry ogler. On Frederick's lips arose a fiendish expression as he became aware of the direction which his glance had, without his consciousness, assumed. Yet he did not remove it. On the contrary, he could by no means account for the overwhelming anxiety which appeared falling like a pall upon his senses. It was with difficulty that he reconciled his dreamy and incoherent feelings with the certainty of being awake. The longer he gazed, the more absorbing became the spell. The more impossible did it appear that he could ever withdraw his glance from the fascination of that tapestry. But the tumult, without becoming suddenly more violent, With a compulsory exertion, he diverted his attention to the glare of ruddy light thrown full by the flaming stables upon the windows of the apartment. The action, however, was but momentary. His gaze returned mechanically to the wall. To his extreme horror and astonishment, the head of the gigantic steed had, in the meantime, altered its position. The neck of the animal, before arched as if in compassion over the prostrate body of its lord, was now extended at full length in the direction of the Baron. The eyes, before invisible, now wore an energetic and human expression, while they gleamed with a fiery and unusual red, and the distended lips of the apparently enraged horse left in full view his sepulchral and disgusting teeth. It's different after reading The Castle of Otranto. It does, actually. It does have, like, similar vibes going on. Hi, Chompy. Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Is this story going to add to our horse counter? Hi, Zen. You did miss the pigs. Yeah. I'm sure there will be clips of it, though, and of course the VOD is available. Yeah, they showed off their new Halloween costumes. Fitch, are you heading out? Ah, Fitch, have a wonderful sleep. Thank you so much for hanging out. Hopefully we will see you on Thursday. Hi, Logo Tone. I'm feeling well. How are you? How are you doing? Good to see you. Stupefied with terror, the young nobleman tottered to the door. As he threw it open, a flash of red light, streaming far into the chamber, flung his shadow with a clear outline against the quivering tapestry, and he shuddered to perceive that shadow as he staggered a while upon the threshold, assuming the exact position and precisely filling up the contour of the relentless and triumphant murderer of the Saracen Berlifitzing. Don't they look cute? You guys, I'm just realizing that I left my microphone on stereo mode instead of putting it on cardioid. Hopefully it's not going to mess up the VOD too much to switch it partway through, but I think it would be better to have it on cardioid, so I'm just going to do that. Okay, how is that sounding? Is that okay? I usually try to switch it to cardioid for the reading, and then stereo for the ASMR. Oh no, logo tone. Oh dear. Yeah, sounds good. Okay. Alright. Are we having, like, lagging? Or is that... I feel like I'm catching, like, a tiny bit of stuttering. But it doesn't say that I'm dropping frames, so I'm a little unsure. Okay. Aw, thank you, JC. To lighten the depression of his spirits, the Baron hurried into the open air. At the principal gate of the palace he encountered 3 equerries. With much difficulty and at the imminent peril of their lives, they were restraining the convulsive plunges of a gigantic and fiery-colored horse. "Whose horse? Where did you get him?" demanded the youth, in a querulous and husky tone, as he became instantly aware that the mysterious steed in the tapestry chamber was the very counterpart of the furious animal before his eyes. "He is your own property, sire," replied one of the equerries. "Or at least, he is claimed by no other owner. We caught him flying, all smoking and foaming with rage, from the burning stables of the castle Berlifitzing. Supposing him to have belonged to the old count's stud of foreign horses, we led him back as an estray. But the grooms there disclaim any title to the creature, which is strange, since he bears evident marks of having made a narrow escape from the flames." "But the letters WVB are also branded very directly on his forehead," interrupted a second equerry. "I suppose them, of course, to be the initials of William von Berlifitzing. But all at the castle are positive in denying any knowledge of the horse." "Extremely singular," said the young baron, with a musing air, and apparently unconscious of the meaning of his words. "He is, as you say, a remarkable horse, a prodigious horse, although, as you very justly observe, of a suspicious and untractable character. Let him be mine, however," he added after a pause. "Perhaps a rider like Frederick of Metzengerstein may tame even the devil from the stables of Berlifitzing." "You are mistaken, my lord. The horse, as I think we mentioned, is not from the stables of the count. If such had been the case, we know our duty better than to bring him into the presence of a noble of your family." "True," observed the baron dryly, and at that instant a page of the bedchamber came from the palace with a heightened color and a precipitate step. He whispered into his master's ear an account of the sudden disappearance of a small portion of the tapestry in an apartment which he designated, entering at the same time into particulars of a minute and circumstantial character. But, from the low tone of voice in which these latter were communicated, nothing escaped to gratify the excited curiosity of the equerries. The young Frederick, during the conference, seemed agitated by a variety of emotions. He soon, however, recovered his composure, and an expression of determined malignancy settled upon his countenance, as he gave peremptory orders that the apartment in question should be immediately locked up, and the key placed in his own possession. "Have you heard of the unhappy death of the old hunter Berlifitzing?" said one of his vassals to the baron, as, after the departure of the page, the huge steed which that nobleman had adopted as his own plunged and curvetted with redoubled fury down the long avenue which extended from the palace to the stables of Metzengerstein. "No," said the baron, turning abruptly towards the speaker. "Dead, say you? What is indeed true, my lord, and to a noble of your name will be, I imagine, no unwelcome intelligence." A rapid smile shot over the countenance of the listener. "How died he?" "When his rash exertions to rescue a favorite portion of his hunting stud, he has himself perished miserably in the flames." "Indeed," ejaculated the baron, as if slowly and deliberately impressed with the truth of some exciting idea. "Indeed," replied the vassal. "Shocking," said the youth, calmly, and turned quietly into the palace. From this date, a marked alteration took place in the outward demeanor of the dissolute young Baron Frederick von Metzengerstein. Indeed, his behavior disappointed every expectation and proved little in accordance with the view of many a maneuvering mamma, while his habits and manner still less than formerly, offered anything congenial with those of the neighboring aristocracy. He was never to be seen beyond the limits of his own domain, and in this wide and social world was utterly companionless, unless, indeed, that unnatural, impetuous, and fiery-colored horse, which he henceforward continually bestrode, had any mysterious right to the title of his friend. Numerous invitations on the part of the neighborhood for a long time, however, periodically came in. "Will the Baron honor our festivals with his presence? Will the Baron join us in a hunting of the boar? Metzengerstein does not hunt. Metzengerstein will not attend," were the haughty and laconic answers. These repeated insults were not to be endured by an imperious nobility. Such invitations became less cordial, less frequent. In time, they ceased altogether. The widow of the unfortunate Count Perverse was even heard to express a hope that the Baron might be at home when he did not wish to be at home, since he disdained the company of his equals, and ride when he did not wish to ride, since he preferred the society of a horse. This, to be sure, was a very silly explosion of hereditary pique, and merely proved how singularly unmeaning our sayings are apt to become when we desire to be unusually energetic. The charitable, nevertheless, attributed the alteration in the conduct of the young nobleman to the natural sorrow of a son for the untimely loss of his parents, forgetting, however, his atrocious and reckless behavior during the short period immediately succeeding that bereavement. Some there were, indeed, who suggested a too haughty idea of self-consequence and dignity. Others again, among them may be mentioned the family physician, did not hesitate in speaking of morbid melancholy and hereditary ill health, while dark hints of a more equivocal nature were current among the multitude. Indeed, the Baron's perverse attachment to his lately acquired charger, an attachment which seemed to attain new strength from every fresh example of the animal's ferocious and demon-like propensities, at length became, in the eyes of all reasonable men, a hideous and unnatural fervor. In the glare of noon, at the dead hour of night, in sickness or in health, in calm or in tempest, the young Metzengerstein seemed riveted to the saddle of that colossal horse, whose intractable audacities so well accorded with his own spirit. Now, I'm guessing that he's not, like, literally in the saddle 24/7, but it makes it sound like he is. There are many myths about demons, spirits, fairies that appear in the form of a horse, and if you get on their back, you can never get off again. And I'm wondering if this story is referencing any of those beings, or if this is a different approach to it. A real nightmare, yeah. Yeah, we shall see. Keeping quiet. Yes, I know, you know what happens. So even though these are very old stories, we're still saying no spoilers. I want to double check with people, particularly on Twitch, is it looking okay? I'm seeing a little bit of choppiness in my video, but the frame rates, it says I'm not dropping any frames. So I'm hoping it's just happening on my end and not for you. It looks great for you guys? Okay, then I won't worry about it. Okay. But yeah, because you have, I mean, I'm more familiar with like Celtic myth, but I'm pretty sure they appear in other cultures. But of course, you have like the Augiski in Irish mythology, which is similar to the Kelpie from Scottish mythology. Right. Well, I appreciate that then, biting your tongue. Alright, let's see. Okay. There were circumstances, moreover, which, coupled with late events, gave an unearthly and portentous character to the mania of the rider and to the capabilities of the steed. The space passed over in a single leap had been accurately measured and was found to exceed, by an astounding difference, the wildest expectations of the most imaginative. The Baron, besides, had no particular name for the animal, although all the rest in his collection were distinguished by characteristic appellations. His stable, too, was appointed at a distance from the rest, and with regard to grooming and other necessary offices, none but the owner in person had ventured to officiate or even to enter the enclosure of that horse's particular stall. It was also to be observed that, although the 3 grooms who had caught the steed as he fled from the conflagration at Berlifitzing had succeeded in arresting his course by means of a chain bridle and noose, yet not one of the 3 could with any certainty affirm that he had, during that dangerous struggle, or at any period thereafter, actually placed his hand upon the body of the beast. Shh, we're reading now. Hush, hush. Instances of peculiar intelligence in the demeanor of a noble and high-spirited horse are not to be supposed capable of exciting unreasonable attention, but there were certain circumstances which intruded themselves by force upon the most skeptical and phlegmatic, and it is said there were times when the animal caused the gaping crowd who stood around to recoil in horror from the deep and impressive meaning of his terrible stamp. Times when the young Metzengerstein turned pale and shrank away from the rapid and searching expression of his human-looking eye. Among all the retinue of the Baron, however, none were found to doubt the ardor of that extraordinary affection which existed on the part of the young nobleman for the fiery qualities of his horse. At least, none but an insignificant and misshapen little page, whose deformities were in everybody's way, and whose opinions were of the least possible importance. He, if his ideas are worth mentioning at all, had the effrontery to assert that his master never vaulted into the saddle without an unaccountable and almost imperceptible shudder, and that upon his return from every long-continued and habitual ride, an expression of triumphant malignity distorted every muscle in his countenance. One tempestuous night, Metzengerstein, awaking from a heavy slumber, descended like a maniac from his chamber, and, mounting in hot haste, bounded away into the mazes of the forest. An occurrence so common attracted no particular attention, but his return was looked for with intense anxiety on the part of his domestics, when, after some hours' absence, the stupendous and magnificent battlements of the Palace Metzengerstein were discovered, crackling and rocking to their very foundation, under the influence of a dense and livid mass of ungovernable fire. That horse just cast a wall of fire. Mounting in hot haste, yes, yes. as the flames, when first seen, had already made so terrible a progress that all efforts to save any portion of the building were evidently futile. The astonished neighborhood stood idly around in silent, if not pathetic, wonder. But a new and fearful object soon riveted the attention of the multitude, and proved how much more intense is the excitement wrought in the feelings of a crowd by the contemplation of human agony than that brought about by the most appalling spectacles of inanimate matter. Upon the long avenue of aged oaks which led from the forest to the main entrance of the palace Metzengerstein, a steed bearing an unbonneted and disordered rider was seen, leaping with an impetuosity which outstripped the very demon of the tempest. The career of the horseman was indisputably, on his own part, uncontrollable. The agony of his countenance, the convulsive struggle of his frame, gave evidence of superhuman exertion, but no sound, save a solitary shriek, escaped from his lacerated lips, which were bitten through and through in the intensity of terror. One instant, and the clattering of hoofs resounded sharply and shrilly above the roaring of the flames and the shrieking of the winds. Another, and clearing at a single plunge the gateway and the moat, the steed bounded far up the tottering staircases of the palace and, with its rider, disappeared amid the whirlwind of chaotic fire. The fury of the tempest immediately died away, and a dead calm sullenly succeeded. A white flame still enveloped the building like a shroud, and, streaming far away into the quiet atmosphere, shot forth a glare of preternatural light, while a cloud of smoke settled heavily over the battlements in the distinct, colossal figure of a horse. The end. So that horse was like the Baron, right? Or something sent by. I liked it. Like, because the Baron dies in the fire. It was a horse from hell. It's just that it said that he had human eyes, and he appeared the same night that the Baron, I forget if of the other household. Sorry, not, maybe he wasn't a Baron. Of Berlifitzing dies in the fire saving his horse. Yeah, oh, sorry, the Count, not the Baron, the Count. Hi, Toasty. Okay, now, those of you on Twitch know that we have a counter for horse deaths. Now, that horse was not a real horse, so he doesn't make the counter go up. However, it was stated that the Count died trying to save his horse. They died together in the fire. So a horse did die. At least one horse died in this story, probably more. But I think that we should count the one that the Count was trying to save, right? So, hey, Will, if you would do the honors of making our horse death counter go up. A moment of silence for the lost steed. At least 32 horses have perished in the pages of our books. How are you feeling, Toasty? Alright. Well, I liked it. I think that was a great one to start out with. At least they're fictional horses. Yeah, real horses live forever, yeah. Of course. Of course. Okay. Should we read The Devil in the Belfry? Yeah, the hell horse doesn't count, but that other horse did. And probably other horses perished in there. Kind of, that's why it says at least. Because, for instance, when we read Black Beauty, and there was also a stable fire in that one, who knows how many, oh gosh. Okay, you're gonna have a little rotini and go breathe outside. Oh, Toasty. I'm glad you've got pasta. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I should add for context, since we are now over on YouTube as well, and this sounds super questionable. I should say we're not here celebrating the deaths of horses. The joke is that I really love horses, but we keep reading books where horses die in them. At least 32 so far. And I don't know about it ahead of time. Seems like I have bad luck with this. Alright. Let us read The Devil in the Belfry. Oh my gosh, there's quite a word in here. Wundervottamitis. Wundervottamitis? Okay. Okay, banana. Sounds good. Wait, does that just translate to I wonder what time it is? Wundervottamitis. Oh my god. Wundervottamitis. Are you kidding? It's a comedy story. Wait, is it? Should I read another one? Or is it still spooky? Is it spooky enough? It's okay if it's like comedy horror, but we definitely want to read like spooky stories. It's not spooky at all? Okay. Why don't we skip to a spooky one? If we have time at the end and we want to read it, we still can, okay? Oh my god, Lin Chu is so lovely. And such a good artist, oh my gosh. Okay. Well, it's in this book called Tales of Horror, so I just assumed it was a tale of horror. No, I don't see that one. What about A Descent into the Maelstrom? And then I think The Murders in the Rue Morgue is a mystery, but like kind of a horrific one, right? We've never read that one here. Murders has a great ending. Okay, why don't we read that one? Oh, this one's longer. Oh, it's much longer. Okay. Hell yeah. Hi, Cinnabon. Okay. The essay at the start makes you wish you never learned to read? What? The essay at the start of Murders? What do you mean? Has Hop Frog already been read? No. The ones that I'm thinking of reading tonight are Murders in Rue Morgue, Descent into the Maelstrom, The Imp of the Perverse. There's also we haven't read William Wilson. That was one we talked about reading last year, I think, and then we didn't read it. Hop Frog's not in this collection. There's The Sphinx. There's The Oblong Box. The Purloined Letter. Did we ever read The Pit and the Pendulum or The Premature Burial? It doesn't have silence. We did not? Okay. We did read The Oval Portrait, though, I believe. The Premature Burial sounds good. Should we read one of those? Yeah, we did do Oval Portrait. I think in the past we've done The Oval Portrait, The Masque of the Red Death, The Telltale Heart, The Black Cat, The Fall of the House of Usher. Those were the first year. And then last year we did Berenice, Morella, Ligeia, and Eleonora. Pit and Pendulum is a classic. Okay. Do you guys have a preference? Did you watch Fall of the House of Usher on Netflix? No, I haven't. I currently do not have Netflix, so. Is Telltale Heart Poe? Yes, it is. Yep. Yes, it's a really good one. It's a really good one. Okay, well let me just choose one, because you know what? I'm sure they're all gonna be great. Well, The Pit and the Pendulum and The Premature Burial were ones that I marked out. I couldn't remember what all my marks meant, but I think I marked them out as potentials to read in a past year, and then we didn't get to them, so why don't we read them? Okay. This is The Pit and the Pendulum. There is a quote at the beginning in Latin, a quatrain composed for the gates of a market to be erected upon the site of the Jacobin clubhouse at Paris. And let me read the translation. The translation is, "Here an unholy mob of torturers long fed their unquenchable thirst for innocent blood. Our country is safe now. The cave of death is destroyed, and what was once a place of annihilation is now a scene of life and health." And then there's a further note. The Jacobins were the most radical of the groups to emerge during the French Revolution and were responsible for the violence of the period known as the Terror, aka from September 1793 to July 1794, which witnessed mass executions of those considered to be enemies of the revolution. William Wilson is... Okay, that's another one I had marked out, so we can read that one later tonight. Okay. The Pit and the Pendulum. I was sick unto death with that long agony, and when they at length unbound me and I was permitted to sit, I felt that my senses were leaving me. The sentence, the dread sentence of death, was the last of distinct accentuation which reached my ears. After that, the sound of the inquisitorial voices seemed merged in one dreamy, indeterminate hum. It conveyed to my soul the idea of revolution, perhaps from its association in fancy with the burr of a mill wheel. this only for a brief period, for presently I heard no more. Yet for a while I saw, but with how terrible an exaggeration, I saw the lips of the black-robed judges. They appeared to me white, whiter than the sheet upon which I traced these words, and thin, even to grotesqueness, thin with the intensity of their expression of firmness, of immovable resolution, of stern contempt of human torture. I saw that the decrees of what to me was fate were still issuing from those lips. I saw them writhe with a deadly locution. I saw them fashion the syllables of my name, and I shuddered because no sound succeeded. I saw, too, for a few moments of delirious horror, the soft and nearly imperceptible waving of the sable draperies which enwrapped the walls of the apartment. And then my vision fell upon the 7 tall candles upon the table. At first, they wore the aspect of charity and seemed white and slender angels who would save me. But then, all at once, there came a most deadly nausea over my spirit, and I felt every fiber in my frame thrill as if I had touched the wire of a galvanic battery. While the angel forms became meaningless specters with heads of flame, and I saw that from them there would be no help. And then there stole into my fancy, like a rich musical note, the thought of what sweet rest there must be in the grave. The thought came gently and stealthily, and it seemed long before it attained full appreciation. But just as my spirit came at length properly to feel and entertain it, the figures of the judges vanished, as if magically from before me. The tall candles sank into nothingness. Their flames went out utterly. The blackness of darkness supervened. All sensations appeared swallowed up in a mad, rushing descent, as of the soul into Hades. Then silence and stillness, night, or the universe. I had swooned, but still will not say that all of consciousness was lost. What of it there remained I will not attempt to define or even to describe, yet all was not lost. In the deepest slumber, no, in delirium, no, in a swoon, no, in death, no, even in the grave all is not lost, else there is no immortality for man. Arousing from the most profound of slumbers, we break the gossamer web of some dream. Yet in a second afterwards, so frail may that web have been, we remember not that we have dreamt. In the return to life from the swoon, there are 2 stages. First, that of the sense of mental or spiritual. Secondly, that of the sense of physical existence. It seems probable that if, upon reaching the second stage, we could recall the impressions of the first, we should find these impressions eloquent in memories of the gulf beyond. And that gulf is what? How at least shall we distinguish its shadows from those of the tomb? But if the impressions of what I have termed the first stage are not, at will, recalled, yet, after long interval, do they not come unbidden, while we marvel whence they came? He who has never swooned is not he who finds strange palaces and wildly familiar faces in coals that glow, is not he who beholds floating in mid-air the sad visions that the many may not view, is not he who ponders over the perfume of some novel flower, is not he whose brain grows bewildered with the meaning of some musical cadence which has never before arrested his attention. I feel like he's getting a little too defensive about the fact that he fainted. Like, we're not judging you for fainting. It's okay. Amid frequent and thoughtful endeavors to remember, amid earnest struggles to regather some token of the state of seeming nothingness into which my soul had lapsed, there have been moments when I have dreamt of success. There have been brief, very brief periods when I have conjured up remembrances which the lucid reason of a latter epoch assures me could have had reference only to that condition of seeming unconsciousness. These shadows of memory tell indistinctly of tall figures that lifted and bore me in silence down, down, still down, till a hideous dizziness oppressed me at the mere idea of the interminableness of the descent. They tell also of a vague horror at my heart on account of that heart's unnatural stillness. Then comes a sense of sudden motionless throughout all things, as if those who bore me, a ghastly train, had outrun in their descent the limits of the limitless and paused from the wearisomeness of their toil. After this, I call to mind flatness and dampness, and then all is madness. The madness of a memory which busies itself among forbidden things. Very suddenly there came back to my soul motion and sound, the tumultuous motion of the heart, and in my ears the sound of its beating. Then a pause in which all is blank. Then again sound and motion and touch, a tingling sensation pervading my frame. Then the mere consciousness of existence without thought, a condition which lasted long. Then, very suddenly, thought and shuddering terror and earnest endeavor to comprehend my true state. Then, a strong desire to lapse into insensibility. Then, a rushing revival of soul and a successful effort to move. And now, a full memory of the trial, of the judges, of the sable draperies, of the sentence, of the sickness, of the swoon, the entire forgetfulness of all that followed, of all that a later day and much earnestness of endeavor have enabled me vaguely to recall. So far, I had not opened my eyes. I felt that I lay upon my back, unbound. I reached out my hand, and it fell heavily upon something damp and hard. There, I suffered it to remain for many minutes, while I strove to imagine where and what I could be. I longed, yet dared not, to employ my vision. I dreaded the first glance at objects around me. It was not that I feared to look upon things horrible, but that I grew aghast lest there should be nothing to see. At length, with a wild desperation at heart, I quickly unclosed my eyes. My worst thoughts, then, were confirmed. The blackness of eternal night encompassed me. I struggled for breath. The intensity of the darkness seemed to oppress and stifle me. The atmosphere was intolerably close. I still lay quietly and made effort to exercise my reason. I brought to mind the inquisitorial proceedings and attempted, from that point, to deduce my real condition. The sentence had passed, and it appeared to me that a very long interval of time had since elapsed. Yet not for a moment did I suppose myself actually dead. Such a supposition, notwithstanding what we read in fiction, is altogether inconsistent with real existence. But where and in what state was I? The condemned to death, I knew, perished usually at the auto da fe, and one of these had been held on the very night of the day of my trial. Had I been remanded to my dungeon to await the next sacrifice, which would not take place for many months? This, I at once saw, could not be. Victims had been in immediate demand. Moreover, my dungeon, as well as all the condemned cells at Toledo, had stone floors, and light was not altogether excluded. You guys, I have something in my eye, and it is scratching me every time I blink, so I'm just gonna go to the BRB screen and fix that, and this isn't even an official break. Okay. Hello again. Sorry about that. You've never read it before? Well, neither have I, and now we're both reading it. No, Pig, sorry. Sorry. Alright. Alright, okay. A fearful idea now suddenly drove the blood in torrents upon my heart, and for a brief period I once more relapsed into insensibility. Upon recovering, I at once started to my feet, trembling convulsively in every fiber. Nim is also trembling convulsively in every fiber. I thrust my arms wildly above and around me in all directions. I felt nothing, yet dreaded to move a step lest I should be impeded by the walls of a tomb. Perspiration burst from every pore and stood in cold, big beads upon my forehead. The agony of suspense grew, at length, intolerable, and I cautiously moved forward, with my arms extended and my eyes straining from their sockets, in the hope of catching some faint ray of light. I proceeded for many paces, but still all was blackness and vacancy. I breathed more freely. It seemed evident that mine was not, at least, the most hideous of fates. And now, as I still continued to step cautiously onward, there came, thronging upon my recollection, 1,000 vague rumors of the horrors of Toledo. Of the dungeons there had been strange things narrated, fables I had always deemed them, but yet strange and too ghastly to repeat, save in a whisper. Was I left to perish of starvation in this subterranean world of darkness? Or what fate, perhaps even more fearful, awaited me? That the result would be death, and a death of more than customary bitterness, I knew too well the character of my judges to doubt. The mode and the hour were all that occupied or distracted me. My outstretched hands at length encountered some solid obstruction. It was a wall, seemingly of stone masonry, very smooth, slimy, and cold. I followed it, stepping with all the careful distrust with which certain antique narratives had inspired me. This process, however, afforded me no means of ascertaining the dimensions of my dungeon, as I might make its circuit and return to the point whence I set out without being aware of the fact. So perfectly uniform seemed the wall. I therefore sought the knife which had been in my pocket when led into the inquisitorial chamber, but it was gone. My clothes had been exchanged for a wrapper of coarse serge. I had thought of forcing the blade in some minute crevice of the masonry so as to identify my point of departure. The difficulty, nevertheless, was but trivial, although in the disorder of my fancy it seemed at first insuperable. I tore a part of the hem of the robe and placed the fragment at full length and at right angles to the wall. In groping my way around the prison, I could not fail to encounter this rag upon completing the circuit. So, at least, I thought, but I had not counted upon the extent of the dungeon, or upon my own weakness. The ground was moist and slippery. I staggered onward for some time when I stumbled and fell. My excessive fatigue induced me to remain prostrate, and sleep soon overtook me as I lay. Upon awaking and stretching forth an arm, I found beside me a loaf and a pitcher with water. I was too much exhausted to reflect upon this circumstance, but ate and drank with avidity. Shortly afterwards, I resumed my tour around the prison, and with much toil came at last upon the fragment of serge. Up to the period when I fell, I had counted 52 paces, and upon resuming my walk, I had counted 48 more when I arrived at the rag. There were in all, then, 100 paces, and admitting 2 paces to the yard, I presumed the dungeon to be 50 yards in circuit. I had met, however, with many angles in the wall, and thus I could form no guess at the shape of the vault. For vault, I could not help supposing it to be. I had little object, certainly no hope, in these researches, but a vague curiosity prompted me to continue them. Quitting the wall, I resolved to cross the area of the enclosure. At first, I proceeded with extreme caution, for the floor, although seemingly of solid material, was treacherous with slime. At length, however, I took courage and did not hesitate to step firmly, endeavoring to cross in as direct a line as possible. I had advanced some 10 or 12 paces in this manner when the remnant of the torn hem of my robe became entangled between my legs. I stepped on it and fell violently on my face. That's so cursed, not good. Oh dear. In the confusion attending my fall, I did not immediately apprehend a somewhat startling circumstance, which yet, in a few seconds afterwards, and while I still lay prostrate, arrested my attention. It was this. My chin rested upon the floor of the prison, but my lips and the upper portion of my head, although seemingly at a less elevation than the chin, touched nothing. At the same time, my forehead seemed bathed in a clammy vapor, and the peculiar smell of decayed fungus arose to my nostrils. I put forward my arm and shuddered to find that I had fallen at the very brink of a circular pit, whose extent, of course, I had no means of ascertaining at the moment. Groping about the masonry just below the margin, I succeeded in dislodging a small fragment and let it fall into the abyss. For many seconds I hearkened to its reverberations as it dashed against the sides of the chasm in its descent. At length, there was a sullen plunge into water, succeeded by loud echoes. At the same moment, there came a sound resembling the quick opening and as rapid closing of a door overhead, while a faint gleam of light flashed suddenly through the gloom, and as suddenly faded away. I saw clearly the doom which had been prepared for me, and congratulated myself upon the timely accident by which I had escaped. Another step before my fall, and the world had seen me no more. And the death just avoided was of that very character which I had regarded as fabulous and frivolous in the tales respecting the Inquisition. To the victims of its tyranny there was the choice of death, with its direst physical agonies, or death with its most hideous moral horrors. I had been reserved for the latter. By long suffering, my nerves had been unstrung until I trembled at the sound of my own voice, and had become in every respect a fitting subject for the species of torture which awaited me. Shaking in every limb, I groped my way back to the wall, resolving there to perish rather than risk the terrors of the wells, of which my imagination now pictured many in various positions about the dungeon. In other conditions of mind, I might have had courage to end my misery at once by a plunge into one of these abysses, but now I was the veriest of cowards. Neither could I forget what I had read of these pits, that the sudden extinction of life formed no part of their most horrible plan. Agitation of spirit kept me awake for many long hours, but at length I again slumbered. Upon arousing, I found by my side, as before, a loaf and a pitcher of water. A burning thirst consumed me, and I emptied the vessel at a draught. It must have been drugged, for scarcely had I drunk before I became irresistibly drowsy. A deep sleep fell upon me, a sleep like that of death. How long it lasted, of course I know not, but when, once again, I unclosed my eyes, the objects around me were visible. By a wild, sulphurous luster, the origin of which I could not at first determine, I was enabled to see the extent and aspect of the prison. In its size, I had been greatly mistaken. The whole circuit of its walls did not exceed 25 yards. For some minutes this fact occasioned me a world of vain trouble. Vain indeed, for what could be of less importance, under the terrible circumstances which environed me, than the mere dimensions of my dungeon? But my soul took a wild interest in trifles, and I busied myself in endeavors to account for the error I had committed in my measurement. The truth at length flashed upon me. In my first attempt at exploration, I had counted 52 paces, up to the period when I fell. I must then have been within a pace or two of the fragment of the surge. In fact, I had nearly performed the circuit of the vault. I then slept, and upon awaking I must have returned upon my steps, thus supposing the circuit nearly double what it actually was. My confusion of mind prevented me from observing that I began my tour with the wall to the left, and ended it with the wall to the right. I had been deceived, too, in respect to the shape of the enclosure. In feeling my way, I had found many angles. Are you eating too fast? What is happening? They're fun. In feeling my way, I had found many angles, and thus deduced an idea of great irregularity. So potent is the effect of total darkness upon one arousing from lethargy or sleep. The angles were simply those of a few slight depressions or niches at odd intervals. The general shape of the prison was square. What I had taken for masonry seemed now to be iron or some other metal in huge plates, whose sutures or joints occasioned the depression. The entire surface of this metallic enclosure was rudely daubed in all the hideous and repulsive devices to which the charnel superstition of the monks had given rise. The figures of fiends and the aspects of menace, with skeleton forms, and other more really fearful images, overspread and disfigured the walls. I observed that the outlines of these monstrosities were sufficiently distinct, but that the colors seemed faded and blurred, as if from the effects of a damp atmosphere. Parallel Nate, thank you for the follow. Thank you, thank you. That he could have been moved somewhere else? Yeah, I guess that's a possibility too. I now noticed the floor, too, which was of stone. In the center yawned the circular pit from whose jaws I had escaped, but it was the only one in the dungeon. All this I saw indistinctly and by much effort, for my personal condition had been greatly changed during slumber. I now lay upon my back, and at full length, on a species of low framework of wood. To this I was securely bound by a long strap resembling a surcingle. Surcingle? 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 Surcingle. It passed in many convolutions about my limbs and body, leaving at liberty only my head and my left arm, to such extent that I could, by dint of much exertion, supply myself with food from an earthen dish, which lay by my side on the floor. A surcingle is a species of long strap. You seem really knowledgeable about long straps. A strap that goes around a horse's body behind the withers is used for training and groundwork, often with side reins, long reins, or other equipment attached with rings. It can also refer to a monk's or clergyman's belt. In equestrian use, it is an adjustable girth that helps a horse get accustomed to pressure before a saddle is introduced and provides a base for various training aids. Well, there we go. Am I saying it right? The pendulum and the long strap. Okay. I've lost my place. Okay. Right. I now lay upon my back, and at full length, on a species of low framework of wood. To this I was securely bound by a long strap, resembling a surcingle. It passed in many convolutions about my limbs and body, leaving at liberty only my head and my left arm, to such extent that I could, by dint of much exertion, supply myself with food from an earthen dish which lay by my side on the floor. I saw, to my horror, that the pitcher had been removed. I say to my horror, for I was consumed with intolerable thirst. This thirst it appeared to be the design of my persecutors to stimulate, for the food in the dish was meat, pungently seasoned. Looking upward, I surveyed the ceiling of my prison. It was some 30 or 40 feet overhead, and constructed much as the side walls. In one of its panels, a very singular figure riveted my whole attention. It was the painted figure of Time, as he is commonly represented, save that, in lieu of a scythe, he held what, at a casual glance, I supposed to be the pictured image of a huge pendulum, such as we see on antique clocks. There was something, however, in the appearance of this machine which caused me to regard it more attentively. While I gazed directly upward at it, for its position was immediately over my own, I fancied that I saw it in motion. In an instant afterwards, the fancy was confirmed. Its sweep was brief and, of course, slow. I watched it for some minutes, somewhat in fear, but more in wonder. Wearied at length with observing its dull movement, I turned my eyes upon the other objects in the cell. A slight noise attracted my notice, and looking to the floor, I saw several enormous rats traversing it. They had issued from the well which lay just within view to my right. Even then, while I gazed, they came up in troops, hurriedly, with ravenous eyes, allured by the scent of the meat. From this it required much effort and attention to scare them away. It might have been half an hour, perhaps even an hour, for I could take but imperfect note of time, before I again cast my eyes upward. What I then saw confounded and amazed me. The sweep of the pendulum had increased in extent by nearly a yard. As a natural consequence, its velocity was also much greater. But what mainly disturbed me was the idea that it had perceptibly descended. I now observed, with what horror it is needless to say, that its nether extremity was formed of a crescent of glittering steel, about a foot in length from horn to horn, the horns upward, and the under edge evidently as keen as that of a razor. Like a razor also, it seemed massy and heavy, tapering from the edge into a solid and broad structure above. It was appended to a weighty rod of brass, and the whole hissed as it swung through the air. I could no longer doubt the doom prepared for me by monkish ingenuity and torture. My cognizance of the pit had become known to the inquisitorial agents. The pit, whose horrors had been destined for so bold a recusant as myself. The pit, typical of hell and regarded by rumor as the ultima thule of all their punishments. The plunge into this pit I had avoided by the merest of accidents. I knew that surprise or entrapment into torment formed an important portion of all the grotesquerie of these dungeon deaths. Having failed to fall, it was no part of the demon plan to hurl me into the abyss, and thus, there being no alternative, a different and milder destruction awaited me. Milder. I have smiled in my agony as I thought of such application of such a term. What boots it to tell of the long, long hours of horror, more than mortal, during which I counted the rushing oscillations of the steel, inch by inch, line by line, with a descent only appreciable at intervals that seemed ages. Down, and still down it came. Days passed. It might have been that many days passed ere it swept so closely over me as to fan me with its acrid breath. The odor of the sharp steel forced itself into my nostrils. I prayed. I wearied heaven with my prayer for its more speedy descent. I grew frantically mad and struggled to force myself upward against the sweep of the fearful scimitar. And then I fell suddenly calm and lay, smiling at the glittering depth, as a child at some rare bauble. There was another interval of utter insensibility. It was brief, for upon again lapsing into life there had been no perceptible descent in the pendulum. But it might have been long, for I knew there were demons who took note of my swoon, and who could have arrested the vibration at pleasure. Upon my recovery, too, I felt very, inexpressibly sick and weak, as if through long inanition. Even amid the agonies of that period, the human nature craved food. With painful effort, I outstretched my left arm as far as my bonds permitted, and took possession of the small remnant which had been spared me by the rats. As I put a portion of it within my lips, there rushed to my mind a half-formed thought of joy, of hope. Yet what business had I with hope? It was, as I say, a half-formed thought. Man has many such, which are never completed. I felt that it was of joy, of hope, but felt also that it had perished in its formation. In vain I struggled to perfect, to regain it. Long suffering had nearly annihilated all my ordinary powers of mind. I was an imbecile, an idiot. The vibration of the pendulum was at right angles to my length. I saw that the crescent was designed to cross the region of the heart. It would fray the serge of my robe. It would return and repeat its operations again and again. Notwithstanding its terrifically wide sweep, some 30 feet or more, and the hissing vigor of its descent, sufficient to sunder these very walls of iron, still the fraying of my robe would be all that, for several minutes, it would accomplish. And at this thought, I paused. I dared not go further than this reflection. I dwelt upon it with a pertinacity of attention, as if, in so dwelling, I could arrest here the descent of the steel. I forced myself to ponder upon the sound of the crescent as it should pass across the garment, upon the peculiar thrilling sensation which the friction of cloth produces on the nerves. I pondered upon all this frivolity until my teeth were on edge. Down, steadily down it crept. I took a frenzied pleasure in contrasting its downward with its lateral velocity. To the right, to the left, far and wide, with the shriek of a damned spirit. To my heart, with the stealthy pace of a tiger. I alternately laughed and howled as the one or the other idea grew predominant. Down, certainly, relentlessly, down. It vibrated within 3 inches of my bosom. I struggled violently, furiously to free my left arm. This was free only from the elbow to the hand. I could reach the latter from the platter beside me to my mouth with great effort, but no farther. Could I have broken the fastenings above the elbow, I would have seized and attempted to arrest the pendulum. I might as well have attempted to arrest an avalanche. Down. Still, unceasingly, still, inevitably, down. I gasped and struggled at each vibration. I shrunk convulsively at its every sweep. My eyes followed its outward or upward whirls with the eagerness of the most unmeaning despair. They closed themselves spasmodically at the descent, although death would have been a relief. Oh, how unspeakable. Still, I quivered in every nerve to think how slight a sinking of the machinery would precipitate that keen, glistening axe upon my bosom. It was hope that prompted the nerves to quiver, the frame to shrink. It was hope, the hope that triumphs on the rack, that whispers to the death-condemned even in the dungeons of the Inquisition. I saw that some 10 or 12 vibrations would bring the steel in actual contact with my robe, and with this observation, there suddenly came over my spirit all the keen, collected calmness of despair. For the first time during many hours, or perhaps days, I thought. It now occurred to me that the bandage or surcingle which enveloped me was unique. I was tied by no separate cord. The first stroke of the razor-like crescent athwart any portion of the band would so detach it that it might be unwound by my person by means of my left hand. But how fearful, in that case, the proximity of the steel. the result of the slightest struggle, how deadly? Was it likely, moreover, that the minions of the torturer had not foreseen and provided for this possibility? Was it probable that the bandage crossed my bosom in the track of the pendulum? Dreading to find my faint and, as it seemed, my last hope frustrated, I so far elevated my head as to obtain a distinct view of my breast. The surcingle enveloped my limbs and body close in all directions, save in the path of the destroying crescent. Scarcely had I dropped my head back into its original position when there flashed upon my mind what I cannot better describe than as the unformed half of that idea of deliverance to which I have previously alluded, and of which a moiety only floated indeterminately through my brain when I raised food to my burning lips. The whole thought was now present, feeble, scarcely sane, scarcely definite, but still entire. I proceeded at once, with the nervous energy of despair, to attempt its execution. For many hours, the immediate vicinity of the low framework upon which I lay had been literally swarming with rats. They were wild, bold, ravenous, their red eyes glaring upon me as if they waited but for motionlessness on my part to make me their prey. To what food, I thought, have they been accustomed in the well? They had devoured, in spite of all my efforts to prevent them, all but a small remnant of the contents of the dish. I had fallen into a habitual seesaw or wave of the hand about the platter, and at length the unconscious uniformity of the movement deprived it of effect. In their voracity, the vermin frequently fastened their sharp fangs in my fingers. With the particles of the oily and spicy viand which now remained, I thoroughly rubbed the bandage wherever I could reach it. Then, raising my hand from the floor, I lay breathlessly still. Dick Spring, I Lamar, thank you. Hades, you called it. At first, the ravenous animals were startled and terrified at the change, at the cessation of movement. They shrank alarmedly back. Many sought the well, but this was only for a moment. I had not counted in vain upon their voracity. Observing that I remained without motion, one or two of the boldest leapt upon the framework and smelt at the surcingle. This seemed the signal for a general rush. Forth from the well they hurried in fresh troops. They clung to the wood. They overran it and leapt in hundreds upon my person. The measured movement of the pendulum disturbed them not at all. Avoiding its strokes, they busied themselves with the anointed bandage. They pressed, they swarmed upon me in ever-accumulating heaps. They writhed upon my throat. Their cold lips sought my own. I was half stifled by their thronging pressure. Disgust, for which the world has no name, swelled my bosom and chilled, with a heavy clamminess, my heart. Yet 1 minute, and I felt that the struggle would be over. Plainly, I perceived the loosening of the bandage. I knew that in more than one place it must be already severed. With a more than human resolution, I lay still. Nor had I erred in my calculations, nor had I endured in vain. I at length felt that I was free. The surcingle hung in ribbons from my body, but the stroke of the pendulum already pressed upon my bosom. It had divided the serge of the robe. It had cut through the linen beneath. Twice again it swung, and a sharp sense of pain shot through every nerve. But the moment of escape had arrived. At a wave of my hand, my deliverers hurried tumultuously away. With a steady movement, cautious, sidelong, shrinking and slow, I slid from the embrace of the bandage and beyond the reach of the scimitar. For the moment, at least, I was free. Free. And in the grasp of the Inquisition, I'd scarcely stepped from my wooden bed of horror upon the stone floor of the prison when the motion of the hellish machine ceased, and I beheld it drawn up by some invisible force through the ceiling. Really, minis? It's a good collection. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have all his works in it, but it is a good selection. None of his poetry in it, though. These are just the short stories. Yeah. This was a lesson which I took desperately to heart. My every motion was undoubtedly watched. Free. I had but escaped death in one form of agony, to be delivered into worse than death in some other. With that thought, I rolled my eyes nervously around on the barriers of iron that hemmed me in. Something unusual, some change which at first I could not appreciate distinctly, it was obvious, had taken place in the apartment. For many minutes, of a dreamy and trembling abstraction, I busied myself in vain, unconnected conjecture. During this period, I became aware for the first time of the origin of the sulphurous light which illumined the cell. It proceeded from a fissure about half an inch in width, extending entirely around the prison at the base of the walls, which thus appeared and were completely separated from the floor. I endeavored, but of course in vain, to look through the aperture. Oh, those are both really good, yeah. I'm trying to, because this is the third year that we've done a night of reading Poe near Halloween. I'm trying to read different stories each year. So we read Red Death and Telltale Heart on the first year, because those ones are just so good. Now we're reading ones I haven't read before, so yeah. Oh my god, DJ, did you really? Wow. Holy moly. As I arose from the attempt, the mystery of the alteration in the chamber broke at once upon my understanding. I have observed that, although the outlines of the figures upon the walls were sufficiently distinct, yet the colors seemed blurred and indefinite. These colors had now assumed, and were momentarily assuming, a startling and most intense brilliancy that gave to the spectral and fiendish portraitures an aspect that might have thrilled even firmer nerves than my own. Demon eyes of a wild and ghastly vivacity glared upon me in 1,000 directions where none had been visible before, and gleamed with the lurid luster of a fire that I could not force my imagination to regard as unreal. Even while I breathed, there came to my nostrils the breath of the vapor of heated iron. A suffocating odor pervaded the prison. A deeper glow settled each moment in the eyes that glared at my agonies. A richer tint of crimson diffused itself over the pictured horrors of blood. I panted. I gasped for breath. There could be no doubt of the design of my tormentors. Oh, most unrelenting. Oh, most demoniac of men. I shrank from the glowing metal to the center of the cell. Amid the thought of the fiery destruction that impended, the idea of the coolness of the well came over my soul like balm. I rushed to its deadly brink. I threw my straining vision below. The glare from the enkindled roof illumined its inmost recesses. Yet for a wild moment did my spirit refuse to comprehend the meaning of what I saw. At length it wrestled its way into my soul. It burned itself upon my shuddering reason. Oh, for a voice to speak. Oh, horror. Oh, any horror but this. With a shriek, I rushed from the margin and buried my face in my hands, weeping bitterly. The heat rapidly increased, and once again I looked up, shuddering as with a fit of the ague. There had been a second change in the cell, and now the change was obvious in the form. As before, it was in vain that I at first endeavored to appreciate or understand what was taking place. But not long was I left in doubt. The inquisitorial vengeance had been hurried by my twofold escape, and there was to be no more dallying with the King of Terrors. The room had been square. I saw that two of its iron angles were now acute, two, consequently, obtuse. The fearful difference quickly increased with a low rumbling or moaning sound. In an instant, the apartment had shifted its form into that of a lozenge. But the alteration stopped not here. I neither hoped nor desired it to stop. I could have clasped the red walls to my bosom as a garment of eternal peace. Death, I said, any death but that of the pit. Fool. Might I have not known that into the pit it was the object of the burning iron to urge me? Could I resist its glow? Or, if even that, could I withstand its pressure? And now, flatter and flatter grew the lozenge, with a rapidity that left me no time for contemplation. Its center, and of course its greatest width, came just over the yawning gulf. I shrank back, but the closing walls pressed me resistlessly onward. At length, for my seared and writhing body, there was no longer an inch of foothold on the firm floor of the prison. I struggled no more. But the agony of my soul found vent in one loud, long, and final scream of despair. I felt that I tottered upon the brink. I averted my eyes. There was a discordant hum of human voices. There was a loud blast, as of many trumpets. There was a harsh grating, as of 1,000 thunders. The fiery walls rushed back. An outstretched arm caught my own as I fell, fainting into the abyss. It was that of General Lasalle. The French army had entered Toledo. The Inquisition was in the hands of its enemies. Oh, man. So that was like really leaning into like, I don't know, it felt more like psychological than anything. Just having to like deal with impending death and torture. I remember seeing a similar, obviously not that ornate, but one of those. Yeah, I did not I thought he was going to die at the end. That's wild. The swinging scythe machine. You know how they do like torture chambers in places, like at like wax museums or whatever, and they have it set up so you can see like torture devices. Yeah, I remember seeing one as a kid, and that machine scared the shit out of me. The literal cavalry. We did know he was writing it after the fact, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Like in the Tower of London, yeah. Yeah. Forget if I saw that one also in the Tower of London, but I saw it elsewhere as a kid, and it was horrifying. The one that really horrified me was the small box with nails coming from it. Like, you can't lean in any direction, there's just nails everywhere. Man. He made up that device. Okay, well, I did see a device that had a swinging scythe. It would not have been lowered from the ceiling dramatically like that. All the torture museums that have it got it from this story. Really? Okay, well, there you go. It's entered the human consciousness from this tale. Wow, okay. Nice. Well, we are going to read another one. I have been taken over by the terrible hungries, and I'm gonna take like a 1 or 2 minute break to like wolf down a protein bar, and then we can read another one, okay? I will be right back. I'll be right back. Hey guys. Alright. Thanks for waiting. I was suddenly starving. Ravenous. Mark Twain said he'd only read Poe if he was paid to. Damn. That's crazy. Alright. Yeah. Well, let's read another then. Another one that I had marked was The Premature Burial. Should we read that one? So there I was, prematurely buried. You might be wondering how I got here. I also have had The Imp of the Perverse recommended to me. That one's shorter as well. Should we read The Imp of the Perverse? Because I feel like Premature Burial, I'm worried it might have very similar vibes to being stuck in a dark pit. So maybe we space them out with a different story in between. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's very different, but let's read something very different. The Imp of the Perverse. Alright. And there is a footnote, or an end note. What actually? Let me double check it. Okay. Yeah, just... This nasty ass amp. It might be a good idea for when I remember Premature Barrier. It's like a tabloid style article though, so the narration is quite different. I got it. Okay. Let's see how this goes. The Imp of the Perverse. In the consideration of the faculties and impulses of the prima mobilia of the human soul, the phrenologists have failed to make room for a propensity which, although obviously existing as a radical, primitive, irreducible sentiment, has been equally overlooked by all the moralists who have preceded them. Oh, good. We're bringing in phrenology in the first sentence. There's another story about Pal in the timeout. You're calling me the perverse imp? In the pure arrogance of the reason, we have all overlooked it. We have suffered its existence to escape our senses solely through want of belief, of faith, whether it be faith in revelation or faith in the Kabbalah. The idea of it has never occurred to us, simply because of its supererogation. We saw no need of the impulse. For the propensity, we could not perceive its necessity. We could not understand, that is to say, we could not have understood. I want to read that sentence again because I did the stresses incorrectly. We could not understand. That is to say, we could not have understood had the notion of this primum mobile ever obtruded itself. We could not have understood in what manner it might be made to further the objects of humanity. either temporal or eternal. It cannot be denied that phrenology and, in great measure, all metaphysicianism have been concocted a priori. The intellectual or logical man, rather than the understanding or observant man, set himself to imagine designs, to dictate purposes to God. Having thus fathomed to his satisfaction the intentions of Jehovah, out of these intentions he built his innumerable systems of mind. In the matter of phrenology, for example, we first determined, naturally enough, that it was the design of the deity that man should eat. We then assigned to man an organ of alimentiveness, and this organ is the scourge with which the deity compels man, willy-nilly, into eating. Interesting. I'm guessing that this became the phrase willy-nilly, but it's actually spelled will-I, nil-I. Will-I, nil-I. But I'm guessing that became willy-nilly? Question mark? With which the deity compels man, will-I, nil-I, into eating. I've never seen it written that way. Correct? Yeah? Love that for the English lingo, yeah. Will-I, nil-I. So interesting, okay. Well, I guess the meaning of it has changed over time then. Interesting. Secondly, having settled it to be God's will that man should continue his species, we discovered an organ of emotiveness forthwith. And so with combativeness with oh my god, I'm struggling. And so with combativeness, with ideality, with causality, with constructiveness, so in short with every organ, whether representing a propensity, a moral sentiment, or a faculty of the pure intellect. And in these arrangements of the principia of human action, the Spurzheimites, whether right or wrong in part or upon the whole, have but followed, in principle, the footsteps of their predecessors, deducing and establishing everything from the preconceived destiny of man and upon the ground of the objects of his Creator. It would have been wiser. It would have been safer to classify, if classify we must, upon the basis of what man usually or occasionally did, and was always occasionally doing, rather than upon the basis of what we took it for granted the deity intended him to do. If we cannot comprehend God in his visible works, how then in his inconceivable thoughts that call the works into being? If we cannot understand him in his objective creatures, how then in his substantive moods and phases of creation? Induction, a posteriori, would have brought phrenology to admit, as an innate and primitive principle of human action, a paradoxical something which we may call perverseness, for want of a more characteristic term. In the sense I intend, it is, in fact, a mobile without motive, a motive not motiviert. Through its promptings we act without comprehensible object, or, if this shall be understood as a contradiction in terms, we may so far modify the proposition as to say that through its promptings we act for the reason that we should not. In theory, no reason could be more unreasonable, but in fact there is none more strong. With certain minds, under certain conditions, it becomes absolutely irresistible. I'm not more certain that I breathe than the assurance of the wrong or error of any action is often the one unconquerable force which impels us, and alone impels us to its prosecution. Nor will this overwhelming tendency to do wrong for the wrong's sake admit of analysis or resolution into ulterior elements. It is a radical, a primitive impulse, elementary. It will be said, I am aware, that when we persist in acts because we feel we should not persist in them, our conduct is but a modification of that which ordinarily springs from the combativeness of phrenology. But a glance will show the fallacy of this idea. The phrenological combativeness has, for its essence, the necessity of self-defense. It is our safeguard against injury. Its principle regards our well-being, and thus the desire to be well is excited simultaneously with its development. It follows that the desire to be well must be excited simultaneously with any principle which shall be merely a modification of combativeness. But in the case of that something which I term perverseness, the desire to be well is not only not aroused, but a strongly antagonistical sentiment exists. Henri, welcome in. Thank you for the follow. Hello, hello. So you guys are totally keeping up, right? Like, makes sense so far? This is very philosophical and hilarious because it's being based on phrenology, which is a debunked science. So this is just a lot of nonsense, actually. Gumby number 5, hello, hello. So far you're just hearing cope about liking to get spanked? Measure my face and tell me I'm born to be a criminal. Perverseness is the desire to do things you ought not to. I mean, yeah. Okay, well that stands up. You have comments, so it might be a spoiler. Okay, would they still be okay to share later? It's not a super long story, you guys. There's a few pages left, but it's not as long as the Pit and the Pendulum. You like fernology. Ferns are great. Must be why your insurance rejected all your phrenologist claims. What is a debunked science? Phrenology. It's the old study, that the belief that the shape and size of your skull indicated certain things about your character and nature. So whether, like, how much your brow is protruding, whether you have lumps or bumps on your head, things like that. Yeah. They would have, like, phrenology maps, which would be like a model of the skull with it, like, marked out. Yeah. So it's a debunked science, which is making this read extra silly, but, yeah. It is interesting. Like, I actually do understand why, like, when it was put forward as an idea, I understand wanting, like, people wanting to pursue that to its logical end and, like, see if it made sense, you know, like, there's something really interesting. Of course, it also brings up, like, loads of problematic prejudices and ethnic prejudices and things like that. Is very problematic. But if you go back in time, or you, like, place your mind back in time before, like, not knowing the things we know now, it's an interesting concept, right? I prefer the concept that you can tell, this also is balderdash, but the concept that you can tell a lot about a person from their handwriting. You know, people being able to, like, look at someone's handwriting and know all these things about them. I think that one's pretty fun. If your brain is a structure and the structure gives rise to how it looks, then the container that holds the brain must say something about the shape of said structure. Right. Yeah, like, I can see how there was an argument made for it. Of course, it is nonsense, but it's fun to do pretend phrenology on a dog. The dog's just sitting there enjoying his head massage. 1961 with Vincent Price, 1991 with Lance Henriksen. You put the trailer for the Cask of Amontillado. No. Oh, sorry, you're asking if I read that one. We read it last year, or the first year. We read it 2 years ago, so we're probably not going to read it tonight. Because I'm trying to read new stories. Yes, Artax, phrenology was used to support a lot of racist ideology. Yeah. And it's absolute bullshit. Alright. Okay. But let's keep reading. Sciencey sounding pseudoscience is so dangerous. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think it is kind of sometimes part of the scientific process, because something might sound like it really has merit, and until it's been like disproven, then, do you know what I mean? Unless you're someone that knows that it's pseudoscience and you're peddling it anyways, and then you're just morally bankrupt. I don't know. Okay. Let's see. An appeal to one's own heart is, after all, the best reply to the sophistry just noticed. No one who trustingly consults and thoroughly questions his own soul will be disposed to deny the entire radicalness of the propensity in question. It is not more incomprehensible than distinctive. There lives no man who, at some period, has not been tormented, for example, by an earnest desire to tantalize a listener by circumlocution. The speaker is aware that he displeases. He has every intention to please. He is usually curt, precise, and clear. The most laconic and luminous language is struggling for utterance upon his tongue. It is only with difficulty that he restrains himself from giving it flow. He dreads and deprecates the anger of him whom he addresses. Yet the thought strikes him that by certain involutions and parentheses this anger may be engendered. That single thought is enough. The impulse increases to a wish, the wish to a desire, the desire to an uncontrollable longing, and the longing to the deep regret and mortification of the speaker, and, in defiance of all consequences, is indulged. That must be tongue-in-cheek and self-aware, right? He knows he's being super wordy in this. I feel like that is cheeky on his part. We have a task before us which must be speedily performed. We know that it will be ruinous to make delay. The most important crisis of our life calls, trumpet-tongued, for immediate energy and action. We glow. We are consumed with eagerness to commence the work, with the anticipation of whose glorious result our whole souls are on fire. It shall be undertaken today, and yet we put it off until tomorrow. And why? There is no answer except that we feel perverse, using the word with no comprehension of the principle. Tomorrow arrives, and with it a more impatient anxiety to do our duty. But with this very increase of anxiety arrives also a nameless, a positively fearful because unfathomable craving for delay. Holy shit. This is like ADHD overwhelm and paralysis that he's describing. you can't do it, you put it off, and then the next day there's more anxiety because now the deadline is up closer, so you have to do it even more, and that makes it even harder to do. Damn. This craving gathers strength as the moments fly. The last hour for action is at hand. We tremble with the violence of the conflict within us, of the definite with the indefinite, of the substance with the shadow. But if the contest have proceeded thus far, it is the shadow which prevails. We struggle in vain. The clock strikes and is the knell of our welfare. At the same time, it is the chanticleer note to the ghost that has so long overawed us. It flies. It disappears. We are free. The old energy returns. We will labor now. Alas, it is too late. Oh my God. I've been through this cycle so many times. This is me before every paper that was due at school. Oh, it's like this story in this tales of horror, and it's just describing the experience of like having ADHD. We stand upon the brink of a precipice. We peer into the abyss. We grow sick and dizzy. Our first impulse is to shrink from the danger. Unaccountably, we remain. By slow degrees, our sickness and dizziness and horror become merged in a cloud of unnameable feeling. By gradations still more imperceptible, this cloud assumes shape, as did the vapor from the bottle out of which rose the genius in the Arabian Nights. But out of this our cloud, upon the precipice's edge, there grows into palpability a shape far more terrible than any genius or demon of a tale. And yet it is but a thought, although a fearful one, and one which chills the very marrow of our bones with the fierceness of the delight of its horror. It is merely the idea of what would be our sensations during the sweeping precipitancy of a fall from such a height. And this fall, this rushing annihilation, for the very reason that it involves the one most ghastly and loathsome of all the most ghastly and loathsome images of death and suffering which have ever presented themselves to our imagination. For this very cause do we now the most vividly desire it. And because our reason violently deters us from the brink, therefore we do the most impetuously approach it. There is no passion in nature so demoniacally impatient as that of him who, shuddering upon the edge of a precipice, thus meditates a plunge. To indulge for a moment in any attempt at thought is to be inevitably lost, for reflection but urges us to forbear, and therefore it is, I say, that we cannot. If there be no friendly arm to check us, or if we fail in such a sudden effort to prostrate ourselves backwards from the abyss, we plunge and are destroyed. Examine these similar actions as we will, we shall find them resulting solely from the spirit of the perverse. We perpetrate them merely because we feel that we should not. Beyond or behind this, there is no intelligible principle. We might indeed deem this perverseness a direct instigation of the arch-fiend, were it not occasionally known to operate in furtherance of good. I have said thus much that in some measure I may answer your question, that I may explain to you why I am here, that I may assign to you something that shall have at least the faint aspect of a cause for my wearing these fetters, and for my tenanting this cell of the condemned. Had I not been thus prolix, you might either have misunderstood me altogether, or, with the rabble, have fancied me mad. As it is, you will easily perceive that I am one of the many uncounted victims of the imp of the perverse. It is impossible that any deed could have been wrought with a more thorough deliberation. For weeks, for months, I pondered upon the means of the murder. Okay. I've rejected 1,000 schemes because their accomplishment involved a chance of detection. At length, in reading some French memoirs, I found an account of a nearly fatal illness that occurred to Madame Pilot through the agency of a candle accidentally poisoned. The idea struck my fancy at once. I knew my victim's habit of reading in bed. I knew, too, that his apartment was narrow and ill-ventilated. But I need not vex you with impertinent details. I need not describe the easy artifices by which I substituted in his bedroom candle-stand a wax light of my own making for the one which I there found. The next morning he was discovered dead in his bed, and the coroner's verdict was death by the visitation of God. Having inherited his estate, all went well with me for years. The idea of detection never once entered my brain. All of the remains of the fatal taper I had myself carefully disposed. I had left no shadow of a clue by which it would be possible to convict, or even to suspect me of the crime. It is inconceivable how rich a sentiment of satisfaction arose in my bosom as I reflected upon my absolute security. For a very long period of time I was accustomed to revel in this sentiment. It afforded me more real delight than all the mere worldly advantages accruing from my sin. But there arrived at length an epoch from which the pleasurable feeling grew by scarcely perceptible gradations into a haunting and harassing thought. It harassed because it haunted. I could scarcely get rid of it for an instant. It is quite a common thing to be thus annoyed with the ringing in our ears, or rather in our memories, of the burden of some ordinary song or some unimpressive snatches from an opera. Nor will we be the less tormented if the song in itself be good, or the opera air meritorious. In this manner, at last, I would perpetually catch myself pondering upon my security and repeating in a low undertone the phrase, "I am safe." One day, whilst sauntering along the streets, I arrested myself in the act of murmuring, half aloud, these customary syllables. In a fit of petulance, I remodeled them thus: I am safe. I am safe, yes, if I be not fool enough to make open confession. No sooner had I spoken these words than I felt an icy chill creep to my heart. I had had some experiences in these fits of perversity, whose nature I have been at some trouble to explain, and I remembered well that in no instance had I successfully resisted their attacks. And now my own casual self-suggestion that I might possibly be fool enough to confess the murder of which I had been guilty confronted me, as if the very ghost of him whom I had murdered, and beckoned me on to death. At first I made an effort to shake off this nightmare of the soul. I walked vigorously, faster, still faster. At length I ran. I felt a maddening desire to shriek aloud. Every succeeding wave of thought overwhelmed me with new terror, for, alas, I too well understood that to think in my situation was to be lost. I still quickened my pace. I bounded like a madman through the crowded thoroughfares. At length, the populace took the alarm and pursued me. I felt then the consummation of my fate. Could I have torn out my tongue, I would have done it. But a rough voice resounded in my ears. A rougher grasp seized me by my shoulder. I turned. I gasped for breath. For a moment I experienced all the pangs of suffocation. I became blind and deaf and giddy. And then some invisible fiend, I thought, struck me with his broad palm upon the back. The long imprisoned secret burst forth from my soul. They say that I spoke with a distinct enunciation, but with marked emphasis and passionate hurry, as if in dread of interruption before concluding the brief but pregnant sentences that consigned me to the hangman and to hell. Having related all that was necessary for the fullest judicial conviction, I fell prostrate in a swoon. But why say more? Today I wear these chains and am here. Tomorrow I shall be fetterless. But where? I was gonna say it's like he has oppositional defiant disorder. Like, he did not confess because it was weighing on his soul. He confessed because he knew that he shouldn't. Oh, taken down by his own impulses. Oh man, confessional diarrhea. Yeah. I lived in a narrow and ill-ventilated apartment once. We've all been there, Sean. Honestly, not the worst way for that man to go, the original murdered man to go. Sitting in bed reading a book, and the fact that he didn't have, like, the fact that the doctor just pronounced him taken by God says to me that he probably, like, it was probably some sort of, like, gas or I don't know, something that he just, like, breathed in. Like, probably not the most horrific death, right? Do I remember the ending of The Telltale Heart? I think so. You're going to bed, Chomps? It was Poe from super far away with the candle wick. Yeah, no, just in bed, reading a book. Could be worse. Oh yeah, he does. Yeah. But that is because he thinks that he's going, like, that he's being haunted, right? Whereas this one, it's just an urge. Oh, good night, Chompy. Thank you for hanging out. Well, it was very wordy, but actually very funny. Because also, when you put the context of this really, like, just overwrought, wordy spiel about this, when you put it in the context that it is a man that's probably about to be executed the next day, he's chained up in prison, and, like, I don't know if someone's listening to his confession or whatever, but, like, of course he's making it as wordy and long as possible, you know? There's, like, a really, like, grim humor to that. it's a thing with Poe, people going crazy and confessing, right? Isn't it also a bit of a thing with real, like, I think more with like serial killers, right? Like there is an element of ego to it, like wanting to be known, wanting to be caught in a way. All right. We do want to read more stories, but I wonder if we should read a poem. I know, is it Artax? Artax, are you the one that really wanted Annabel Lee? A poem. Which are not in this book. And I may have them in one of my anthologies, but I'm just gonna bring it up on the screen. Okay. Okay. Annabel Lee. You know it's cliche, but it's one of your favorites. That's it. It's. I wasn't even gonna call it cliche. I mean, I would like to also read The Raven, and that one is, in some ways, like the most cliche, and but it's still really good. It's really good. Okay. Annabel Lee. It was many and many a year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, that a maiden there lived, whom you may know by the name of Annabel Lee. And this maiden she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. I was a child, and she was a child, in this kingdom by the sea. But we loved with a love that was more than love, I and my Annabel Lee, with a love that the winged seraphs of heaven coveted her and me. And this was the reason that long ago in this kingdom by the sea, a wind blew out of a cloud, chilling my beautiful Annabel Lee, so that her high-born kinsman came and bore her away from me, to shut her up in a sepulchre in this kingdom by the sea. The angels, not half so happy in heaven, went envying her and me. Yes, that was the reason, as all men know, in this kingdom by the sea, that the wind came out of the cloud by night, chilling and killing my Annabel Lee. But our love, it was stronger by far than the love of those who were older than we, of many far wiser than we. And neither the angels in heaven above nor the demons down under the sea can ever dissever my soul from the soul of the beautiful Annabel Lee. For the moon never beams without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Annabel Lee. And the stars never rise but I feel the bright eyes of the beautiful Annabel Lee. And so, all the night tide I lie down by the side of my darling, my life and my bride, in her sepulchre there by the sea, in her tomb by the sounding sea. Welcome, Raiders. Hello, Bunny Vibes. Thank you so much for the raid. Welcome to the Artex. Thank you for the biddies. Hello. Sorry, I didn't want to pause in the middle of a poem, but welcome in, everyone. Hello. Oh my goodness. It is a lovely poem, yeah. Nick, you finally broke your fever. And out bunny vibes the last part. Oh, I'm so glad you're feeling a bit better there, Nick. Bunny, thank you so much. Bunny's partner pushing. Hell yeah, you guys make sure you are supporting Bunny vibes. Oh my goodness. Would love to see you get partner. That would be awesome. That would be awesome. Oh my goodness, Bunny is so kind, so sweet, so talented. The vibe is just so cozy and caring. Like, you just feel very cared for over there. It is so lovely. Hello, you guys. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry if I missed any messages, by the way. Feel free to repeat anything if I've missed a message that you want me to see. You felt funny? Hell yeah. Hi, Nick. My costume. You mean tonight? I'm not, like, wearing, like, a costume tonight. So. Do you mean my costume last night? Oh my goodness. Did you get a shout out? I think you did, right? You got a shout out? Welcome in, everyone. If you are new here, I'm Faolkor, and we do a mixture of soft-spoken, chatty ASMR, and also book reading, story time. Also do some co-working. You loved the costume yesterday. Thank you. It was a lot of fun to do. Tonight we are reading Tales of Horror by Edgar Allan Poe. We paused to read Annabel Lee, and I still want to read The Raven, but otherwise we're mostly doing the short fiction. Yeah, but usually you will find us working our way through a novel. We actually, I guess we're slightly paused on the novella that we're reading, which is Sheridan Le Fanu. We'll return to that on Sunday because Thursday, our next stream on Thursday, is actually a pumpkin painting party, and Friday is Halloween, and we are making potions. That'll all be happening just over on Twitch. For context, since I'm also live on YouTube right now, just going live on YouTube for the reading portions. So I was Mama something. I was Mother Ingeborg, who is my D&D character. She's very, very old. And I'd never done old age makeup or anything. Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, so we're gonna be reading probably a couple more Poe stories tonight. And then yeah, we're not gonna get back to reading until Sunday, which is kind of sad, but also I'm really excited for the Halloween stuff we're gonna do, so. But Bunny Vibes, thank you again so much for bringing your lovely community over. That's so exciting that your partner pushing. Hopefully that will happen for you soon. You thought you were just dreaming from all the meds. Faolkor looks really old. Yeah, okay. So, and a reminder, let me take this opportunity to just say, some of you new people in here, this is a new thing that I'm starting, that for the reading segments of the streams that I'm also going live over on YouTube, as per Twitch rules, I am not incentivizing anyone to go over there instead of Twitch. However, if you are able to even just like open the YouTube as an additional window or something, the bonus there is that the time, like live streams, people watching live streams, counts towards the hours watched that are required to unlock monetization on YouTube. So thank you, Sean. Yeah, that it's the first link up there is where I'm doing the reading. The other one doesn't have videos up yet, but will hopefully very soon, and that's for ASMR. If you'd like to drop a follow to each of them, that would be amazing. No one go to, yeah, we are not telling you, definitely don't go over there. And also, apparently, I haven't thought of doing this yet, but apparently it's a thing you're supposed to do on YouTube, to be like, hey, people watching on YouTube, if you want to drop a like, well, that would be super rad. You want to drop a like. Big Brain Faolkor in the hours, what? I mean, it just makes sense to do it, right? Over here, the mods whack you with a wrench instead of prodding you with a sword. Yeah. Yeah. Like, follow, subscribe, ring that bell. Smash that subscribe button. Oh. No, but, if you do want to drop a like, that would be super nice. Like really cool of you. Like, that would just be, like, really awesome. Oh, cute. Thank you for the follow. We need to choose what story we are reading next. Oh, friend, thank you for the stretch routine. Yeah, that's a good idea. That is a good idea. And Ryoka, thank you for the follow. Thank you for the follow. Oh. What story do you have? I'm about to decide. You dropped a like and you're both Twitch and YouTube. Yaka, no, that is so nice of you. Thank you so much. As Logotone, yeah. Thank you so much. You may have to remind me a couple more times that you are Logotone on Twitch. Like, it may take me a couple of reminders to remember who you are and, you know, to link those. Subscribe to Book Funny Vibes. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. It's been something that has taken I don't know, a big push to do, but I'm hoping to really make it a thing. Wait, Duck, thank you for gifting a sub to Cube. Oh my goodness. Toasty, thank you. Yeah. It's reasons. We all love this channel. You're so enthusiastic and creative. Thank you. You have to get used to being Logotone. Do you mind if I use, like, when you're on YouTube, call you Yakanono, or like, that's fine? He will get up all the time. Well, it's very sweet of you, Duck. And if you're still around when we're done the reading segment, then I would love to do a name trace for you. Yeah, that's fine, Yaka. Okay, I'm gonna read out some titles of potential stories we could read next, and if there's one that you guys think sounds awesome or you know is awesome, feel free to vouch for it. Hate Wheel, I believe, is here. Certainly was. Okay, William Wilson, which does not have an intriguing name, but I did mark it down on a previous year as being a potential story to read, so I'm guessing that I looked into it then and thought it sounded intriguing. So that's one of them. The Man of the Crowd. Never Bet the Devil Your Head. The Premature Burial. The Oblong Box. The Purloined Letter. The Facts in the Case of M. Valdemar and the Sphinx. Should I choose at random, or does anyone have a preference from amongst those? I can choose at random, it's totally fine, but just giving you guys a chance if there is one where you're like, do that one. Purloin is a fun word, yes. It always makes me think of, like, stealing meat in specific, though. Probably because of loin. I picture, like, stealing loins, but, like the meat cut, not, like, someone's actual crotch, but, like stealing cuts of meat. Yeah. Is it Monsieur Valdemar or is it M. Valdemar? The purloined letter is the secret to murders in the Rue Morgue. Oh yeah, that's the other one. Murders in the Rue Morgue. I don't know what the fifth one was. I don't know. Oh, there's also a descent into the maelstrom. There's a lot of choices. M is Monsieur. What did you click on? What do you mean? What do you mean, wingman? Do you worship Satan and shit? Wait, are you asking me that? Or are you asking Hate Wheel that, since you also seem to be proposing to Hate Wheel here in my chat? It does have a manuscript found in a bottle. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I'm guessing the MS stands for manuscript. That one's good too? It does? Yeah, okay. Okay, let's do that one. Well, this one is takes place on a ship. Nimbus, calm down. Nimbus. Nothing ever goes wrong on a ship. Alright. And it's so tempting to reread some from like a couple years ago, like the Masque of the Red Death. Like, I want to reread it. I'm like, we should read new things, but you keep thinking I was reading Lovecraft. No. No. Not tonight. Damn, like I just want to read Masque of the Red Death again. So good. So good. It's so good. Should I read it again? Is that okay? Is that alright? It's so good. And it was one of those ones where like I feel like you need to read it more than once anyways. Yeah, okay. Alright. Let's do it. I'm like tempted, you know? Okay. There's people that haven't heard it? Yeah. Okay. Alright. Alright. The Masque of the Red Death. The Red Death had long devastated the country. No pestilence had ever been so fatal or so hideous. Blood was its avatar and its seal, the redness and the horror of blood. There were sharp pains and sudden dizziness, and then profuse bleeding at the pores with dissolution. The scarlet stains upon the body, and especially upon the face of the victim, were the pest ban which shut him out from aid and from the sympathy of his fellow men. And the whole seizure, progress, and termination of the disease were the incidents of half an hour. But the Prince Prospero was happy and dauntless and sagacious. When his dominions were half depopulated, he summoned to his presence 1,000 hale and light-hearted friends from among the knights and dames of his court, and with these retired to the deep seclusion of one of his castellated abbeys. This was an extensive and magnificent structure, the creation of the prince's own eccentric yet august taste. A strong and lofty wall girdled it in. This wall had gates of iron. The courtiers, having entered, brought furnaces and massy hammers and welded the bolts. They resolved to leave means neither of ingress nor egress to the sudden impulses of despair or of frenzy from within. The abbey was amply provisioned. With such precautions, the courtiers might bid defiance to contagion. The external world could take care of itself. In the meantime, it was folly to grieve or to think. The prince had provided all the appliances of pleasure. There were buffoons, there were improvisatori, there were ballet dancers, there were musicians, there was beauty, there was wine. All these and security were within. Without was the Red Death. It was towards the close of the 5th or 6th month of his seclusion, and while the pestilence raged most furiously abroad, that the Prince Prospero entertained his 1,000 friends at a masked ball of the most unusual magnificence. It was a voluptuous scene, that masquerade. But first, let me tell you of the rooms in which it was held. There were 7, an imperial suite. In many palaces, however, such suites form a long and straight vista, while the folding doors slide back nearly to the walls on either hand, so that the view of the whole extent is scarcely impeded. Here, the case was very different, as might have been expected from the Duke's love of the bizarre. The apartments were so irregularly disposed that the vision embraced but little more than one at a time. There was a sharp turn at every 20 or 30 yards, and at each turn a novel effect. To the right and left, in the middle of each wall, a tall and narrow Gothic window looked out upon a closed corridor which pursued the windings of the suite. These windows were of stained glass, whose color varied in accordance with the prevailing hue of the decorations of the chamber into which it opened. That at the eastern extremity was hung, for example, in blue, and vividly blue were its windows. The second chamber was purple in its ornaments and tapestries, and here the panes were purple. The third was green throughout, and so were the casements. The fourth was furnished and lighted with orange, the fifth with white, the sixth with violet. The seventh apartment was closely shrouded in black velvet tapestries that hung all over the ceiling and down the walls, falling in heavy folds upon a carpet of the same material and hue. But in this chamber only, the color of the windows failed to correspond with the decorations. The panes here were scarlet, a deep blood color. Now, in no one of the 7 apartments was there any lamp or candelabrum amid the profusion of golden ornaments that lay scattered to and fro or depended from the roof. There was no light of any kind emanating from lamp or candle within the suite of chambers. But in the corridors that followed the suite, there stood, opposite to each window, a heavy tripod bearing a brazier of fire that protected its rays through the tinted glass and so glaringly illumined the room. And thus were produced a multitude of gaudy and fantastic appearances. But in the western or black chamber, the effect of the firelight that streamed upon the dark hangings through the blood-tinted panes was ghastly in the extreme, and produced so wild a look upon the countenances of those who entered that there were few of the company bold enough to set foot within its precincts at all. It was in this apartment. Conquistador, thank you for using your Prime over here. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. How are you doing tonight? Oh, I need to stop putting the lid back on this in the middle of stream. There we go. It was in this apartment, also, that there stood against the western wall a gigantic clock of ebony. Its pendulum swung to and fro with a dull, heavy, monotonous clang. And when the minute hand made the circuit of the face, and the hour was to be stricken, there came from the brazen lungs of the clock a sound which was clear and loud and deep and exceedingly musical, but of so peculiar a note and emphasis that at each lapse of an hour the musicians of the orchestra were constrained to pause momentarily in their performance to hearken the sound. And thus the waltzers perforce ceased their evolutions, and there was a brief disconcert of the whole gay company. And while the chimes of the clock yet rang, it was observed that the giddiest grew pale, and the more aged and sedate passed their hands over their brows as if in confused reverie or meditation. But when the echoes had fully ceased, a light laughter at once pervaded the assembly. The musicians looked at each other and smiled as if at their own nervousness and folly, and made whispering vows each to the other that the next chiming of the clock should produce in them no similar emotion. And then, after the lapse of 60 minutes, which embrace 3,600 seconds of the time that flies, there came yet another chiming of the clock, and then were the same disconcert and tremulousness and meditation as before. Good night, Nick. Good night, good night. Sleep well. But in spite of these things, it was a gay and magnificent revel. The tastes of the Duke were very peculiar. He had a fine eye for colors and effects. He disregarded the decora of mere fashion. His plans were bold and fiery, and his conceptions glowed with barbaric luster. There are some who would have thought him mad. His followers felt that he was not. It was necessary to hear and see and touch him to be sure that he was not. He had directed in great part the movable embellishments of the 7 chambers upon occasion of this great fete, and it was his own guiding taste which had given character to the masqueraders. Bayesha, oh my god, hi Bay. Welcome in Raiders, hello. Oh my goodness, how are you doing? Happy almost Halloween, Bay. How was your stream? What were you guys getting up to? Welcome. Hi. Were you gaming tonight or just chatting? A Masque of Raiders. Hell yeah, Dragon Soul. Hi, Dr. Gilman. Bloodlines 2? I have not played it. Is it good? Thank you. Vampire Bloodlines 2 was crazy fun. Oh, shoot. Okay. She was being a business vampire in Seattle. Hell yeah. Is this... Oh gosh, I don't actually know this game. Making me curious though. It's good she did awesome. Yay. It's a cool world to explore, lots to unpack, plus you get to feel badass. I mean, that's one of the main benefits of most video games. You know, I enjoy that. She didn't let you name anybody? Were your name suggestions absolute garbage, Fatalisk? Is there a reason? It's a unique world. Oh, that sounds really cool. I love world exploration. Well, hello Raiders. If you are new here, I'm Faolkor. We do a mixture of soft-spoken, pretty chatty, traditional ASMR, and also reading content, and you have come in during our reading content, which tonight we are reading from Edgar Allan Poe's Tales of Horror. Currently reading The Masque of the Red Death. You never got a chance. Well, Fatalisk, looks like you'll have to play your own game and name everybody. Yeah. You were a mean streamer today, super focused on the game. Well, look. They should realize that it is a privilege to just sit and watch you be a badass vampire. It's crazy that they're asking for more. The entitlement. But yeah, you guys make sure you are dropping a follow for Paige Nash, who does lots of awesome gaming content, just chatting content. She is so rad and so cool and so nice. Make sure you're checking her out and dropping that follow. She's only a little bit mean. I mean, you gotta be at least a little bit mean. A little bit. Paid attention to you? Well, that's good. Yeah, so we have read is this story number 3 so far, or story number 4 tonight? And then also we've read one poem. We still have to read The Raven, which you gotta do it every year. And I'm wearing my headband and gloves that have text from The Raven on it. So you also enjoyed the Netflix version of Masque? I haven't seen it. You just mentioned that story in base chat earlier in reference to Vincent Price movies. I just watched a Vincent Price movie the other day I watched The House on Haunted Hill for the first time. It was actually so good. I really enjoyed it. One day maybe she'll do a 24-hour stream. I don't know how, dude, I never will. I'll say that, I never will. It was good. It made me want to watch more of his films, yeah. But there's a lot going on here. We've got a crazy packed Halloween. Tomorrow we have, like, Wednesday, no stream Wednesday, but that's because I've got a million fucking things to do to prepare for Thursday and Friday. Thursday, we're having a pumpkin painting party here. I should specify because I'm also on YouTube right now. This is just happening on Twitch. Pumpkin painting party, and I'm going to be dressed. Okay. We have a tradition here where I dress up every year like Mr. Peanut, but a different iteration of Mr. Peanut every year. And this year I am going as Mr. Peanut in The Nightmare Before Christmas. So that's happening. Peanuts of the Multiverse, yeah. Last year I was biblically accurate Mr. Peanut, aka Peanut Afraid. Yes. And then on Friday, which is actual Halloween, we're going to be doing a potion making party. It is also my streamiversary, my 3-year streamiversary. I started streaming on Halloween Day in 2022. So, yep. And have been going regularly ever since. Yeah, I was like, I love this. Oh, Mr. Bananafield, thank you for gifting a sub to Vase. Thank you. Oh wow, really, Hey Whale? Okay, we'll probably read one of those ones after this. What kind of potions? We do a little Faolkor here. Basically how we do it is that I have a whole range of ingredients, and you guys use channel points to tell me which ingredients to combine, and then we see what that potion does. So, it's pretty fun. We've done it a couple years in a row, but obviously, you know, different potions are made, so it's a little different every year. At one point you were Mr. Peanut as a Rockefeller Center can dancer magician. No, that was just basic Mr. Peanut. That was just default Mr. Peanut. But I had to wear a corset to make myself really peanut shaped. And I didn't own a yellow corset, so it looked like a burlesque Mr. Peanut, but that's just my default Mr. Peanut. This is all obviously very relevant to literature. Oh my god. Alright, well, thank you so much. If you are still hanging out when we end the reading portion and get back into ASMR, I would love to give you a name trace, but obviously please do not feel any pressure to hang out for that. Please feel free to, you know, pop out whenever you need to. We're gonna be finishing Masque of the Red Death, reading 1 or 2 more stories depending on how long it is, and also I'm gonna want to read The Raven because of course. Mr. Peanut with good no cleavage. No. It was not, I want to be clear, it was not slutty Mr. Peanut. That's not what the costume was. And it was not Mrs. Peanut. It was just, it is what it is. Jerry Rig, thank you for the follow. Thank you for the follow. Oh my god, Nim is blasting off. Nim is blasting off. I don't know if there's anyone over on YouTube that's not over on Twitch, but that is a hype train in the Twitch channel going off. I am trying, this is a very new thing for me, doing multi-streaming on YouTube while doing the reading content. How dare you, that hot dog's name is Nimbus. If you feel like it and you want to drop a subscribe, aka the free option, over on YouTube. That first channel link is for the one that I'm live on now, which is reading. The other one has no videos right now, but I'm hoping to really get it off the ground very soon, and that one will be pure ASMR content. And this is a zero pressure thing. This is just if someone has the bandwidth, both personal and, you know, technological, to, you know, open the YouTube window as a separate window. It helps with watch hours. But what even is that? What even is what? Wait, you were a slutty bag of ice one year? What? How? Okay, well, I'm intrigued. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you, Sean, for doing that. Yeah. It's your bedtime. Good night, Dragon Soul. Sleep well. Sleep well. I thought Sluxty was an intentional typo to try to get around, like, an auto mod, but... Alright, we're gonna dive back into the story. We are reading The Masque of the Red Death. If you're familiar with the story, we're not too far into it. Basically, there is a plague going around, and a prince has taken 1,000 of his friends and a bunch of performers, like, to sequester in, wait, did it say it was, like, I feel like it used, like, a church word. Is it, like, a monastery, or, like, anyways, a palace, basically. And, an abbey, thank you, yeah. They are having a wild night. It has been several months that they have been locked up, trying to keep the plague away, trying to outlast it. Okay, DJ. Oh, you are so sweet. Thank you, DJ. Thank you, thank you. Have a wonderful sleep. Oh my god, Fatalist, that's too funny. That's really funny. Okay. Okay. So, and there are 7 rooms, and each room is a different color and has the same colored windows with the light coming in, makes them glow that color, except for the 7th room, which is black, that has red windows and has a creepy black clock, and every time the clock chimes, everyone feels all weird. The musicians have to stop playing, and then they start up again. Now you're caught up. Okay. But, in spite of these things, it was a gay and magnificent revel. The tastes of the Duke were peculiar. He had a fine eye for colors and effects. He disregarded the decora of mere fashion. His plans were bold and fiery, and his conceptions glowed with barbaric luster. There were some who would have thought him mad. His followers felt that he was not. It was necessary to hear and see and touch him to be sure that he was not. He had directed in great part the movable embellishments of the 7 chambers upon occasion of this great fete, and it was his own guiding taste which had given character to the masqueraders. Be sure they were grotesque. There were much glare and glitter and piquancy, and phantasm, much of what has been seen in Hernani. There were arabesque figures with unsuited limbs and appointments. There were delirious fancies such as the madman fashions. There was much of the beautiful, much of the wanton, much of the bizarre, something of the terrible, and not a little of that which might have excited disgust. To and fro in the 7 chambers there stalked, in fact, a multitude of dreams, and these, the dreams, writhed in and about, taking hue from the rooms and causing the wild music of the orchestra to seem as the echo of their steps. And anon there strikes the ebony clock which stands in the hall of velvet. And then, for a moment, all is still, and all is silent save the voice of the clock. The dreams are stiff frozen as they stand, but the echoes of the chime die away. They have endured but an instant, and a light, half-subdued laughter floats after them as they depart. And now again, the music swells, and the dreams live and writhe to and fro more merrily than ever, taking hue from the many-tinted windows through which stream the rays from the tripods. But to the chamber which lies most westwardly of the 7, there are now none of the maskers who venture, for the night is waning away, and there flows a ruddier light through the blood-colored panes, and the blackness of the sable drapery appalls. And to him whose foot falls upon the sable carpet, there comes from the near clock of ebony a muffled peal, more solemnly emphatic than any which reaches their ears who indulge in the more remote gaieties of other apartments. Jerica, you're too sweet. Oh my goodness. Thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. But these other apartments were densely crowded, and in them beat feverishly the heart of life. And the revel went whirlingly on until at length there commenced the sounding of midnight upon the clock. And then the music ceased, as I have told, and the evolutions of the waltzers were quieted, and there was an uneasy cessation of all things as before. But now there were 12 strokes to be sounded by the bell of the clock, and thus it happened, perhaps, that more of thought crept with more of time into the meditations of the thoughtful among those who reveled. And thus too it happened, perhaps, that before the last echoes of the last chime had utterly sunk into silence, there were many individuals in the crowd who had found leisure to become aware of the presence of a masked figure which had arrested the attention of no single individual before. The rumor of this new presence having spread itself whisperingly around, there arose at length from the whole company a buzz or murmur expressive of disapprobation and surprise, then finally of terror, of horror, and of disgust. In an assembly of phantasms such as I have painted, it may well be supposed that no ordinary appearance could have excited such sensation. In truth, the masquerade license of the night was nearly unlimited, but the figure in question had out-Heroded Herod, and gone beyond the bounds of even the prince's indefinite decorum. There are chords in the hearts of the most reckless which cannot be touched without emotion. even with the utterly lost, to whom life and death are equally jests, there are matters of which no jest can be made. The whole company, indeed, seemed now deeply to feel that in the costume and bearing of the stranger neither wit nor propriety existed. The figure was tall and gaunt and shrouded from head to foot in the habiliments of the grave. The mask which concealed the visage was made so nearly to resemble the countenance of a stiffened corpse that the closest scrutiny must have had difficulty in detecting the cheat. And yet, all this might have been endured, if not approved, by the mad revelers around. But the mummer had gone so far as to assume the type of the Red Death. His vesture was dabbled in blood, and his broad brow, with all the features of the face, was besprinkled with the scarlet horror. When the eyes of Prince Prospero fell upon this spectral image, which, with a slow and solemn movement, as if more fully to sustain its role, stalked to and fro among the waltzers, he was seen to be convulsed in the first moment with a strong shudder either of terror or distaste, but in the next his brow reddened with rage. "Who dares," he demanded hoarsely of the courtiers who stood near him, "who dares insult us with this blasphemous mockery? Seize him and unmask him, that we may know whom we have to hang at sunrise from the battlements." It was in the eastern or blue chamber in which stood the Prince Prospero as he uttered these words. They rang throughout the 7 rooms, loudly and clearly, for the prince was a bold and robust man, and the music had become hushed at the waving of his hand. It was in the blue room where stood the prince, with a group of pale courtiers at his side. At first, as he spoke, there was a slight rushing movement of this group in the direction of the intruder, who, at the moment, was also near at hand, and now, with deliberate and stately step, made closer approach to the speaker. But from a certain nameless awe with which the mad assumptions of the mummer had inspired the whole party, there were found none who put forth hand to seize him, so that, unimpeded, he passed within a yard of the prince's person, and, while the vast assembly, as if with one impulse, shrank from the centers of the rooms to the walls, as if with one impulse, shrank from the centers... I read with it. As if with one impulse, shrank from the centers of the rooms to the walls, he made his way uninterruptedly, but with the same solemn and measured step which had distinguished him from the first, through the blue chamber to the purple, through the purple to the green, through the green to the orange, through this again to the white, and even thence to the violet, ere a decided movement had been made to arrest him. It was then, however, that the Prince Prospero, maddening with rage and the shame of his own momentary cowardice, rushed hurriedly through the 6 chambers, while none followed him, on account of a deadly terror that had seized upon all. He bore aloft a drawn dagger and had approached in rapid impetuosity. You tell her, Cloud. And had approached in rapid impetuosity to within 3 or 4 feet of the retreating figure, when the latter, having attained the extremity of the velvet apartment, turned suddenly and confronted his pursuer. There was a sharp cry, and the dagger dropped, gleaming upon the sable carpet, upon which, instantly afterwards, fell prostrate in death the Prince Prospero. Then, summoning the wild courage of despair, a throng of the revelers at once threw themselves into the black apartment and, seizing the mummer, whose tall figure stood erect and motionless within the shadow of the ebony cloak, gasped in unutterable horror at finding the grave cerements and corpse-like masque which they handled with so violent a rudeness, untenanted by any tangible form. And now was acknowledged the presence of the Red Death. He had come like a thief in the night, and one by one dropped the revelers in the blood-bedewed halls of their revel, and died each in the despairing posture of his fall. And the life of the ebony clock went out with that of the last of the gay, and the flames of the tripods expired, and darkness and decay and the Red Death held illimitable dominion over all. I love that story. The last line is like a little too edgelordy. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like a little much. Overall, beautifully written story. That last line is trying so hard. Hi, Skior. And hello, Greg, over on YouTube. Hello, hello. Yeah. But this one line at the end, one by one dropped the revelers in the blood-bedewed halls of their revel and died each in the despairing posture of his fall. That's a beautifully written line. The Red Death is Jesus? Is it not just like a plague? That was fun. Have a great day. You too, Greg. Have a good one. Have you ever read 13 Reasons Why? No, I haven't. Hi, Dr. Gilman. It's like Ebola. Yeah, I mean, it's some sort of plague, right? And they couldn't stay away from it. But it does also feel like they're being punished for... I don't know if it's meant to be that they're being punished for trying to avoid it, or if it's like you can't ever fully escape. I don't know. I don't know. Sounds like a terrible time. Just a strange brainwave you were having about how Poe quoted Revelation. Oh, yeah? Oh, interesting. Yeah, because he does, right? He says he came like a thief in the night. I had that thought as well. I'm like, oh, like Jesus. But I wasn't thinking about like whether it was actually like Jesus. I mean, isn't there also a part it's been a long time since I've read Revelation, but it says that right before Jesus comes like a thief in the night, that the moon will be blood red, and we've got this room with the red light coming in. So you don't think it is Jesus? It's an interesting idea. Jesus is a thief? No, that's not what it means, Greg. It means that Jesus will come unexpectedly. This is in the book of Revelations talking about the second coming. I want to re-clarify for anyone who's new here, this is not a religion stream, this is a literature stream, so we're approaching the Bible as a work of literature here. Not the first time he's been compared to a revenant, true. Just justice for their hubris. Yeah, but for it to be hubris, that implies that the Red Death, that the plague is owed something, that there is a sentience to it, that you have deprived the Red Death of what it came for. You know? Because otherwise, there's nothing hubristic about like, oh, there's something contagious about let's sequester for a while, right? So it is applying some sort of like sentience or like balance of life and death to this plague. Bring back the Inquisition. Well, we already read The Pit and the Pendulum. We saw what the Inquisition does. So, no to that. It's literally anthropomorphizing a plague. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the one thing that I might give some weight to in terms of hubris is like they call him a prince. Is he abandoning all his other citizens? He takes 1,000 friends, you know. But is he is he responsible for other people and he just abandons them? They thought they were clever and it reminded them that they weren't. I wonder if Poe was at all inspired by the Decameron? Because that's also a story of a bunch of nobles who are escaping a plague, but it's only like a handful of them. And they go out to the countryside and they sequester, and they tell a bunch of stories to each other. But the Decameron would be, you know, much older than Poe. So he's like, what if the Decameron, except for horrible? I don't know. We should read the Decameron at some point. Alright. We'll probably read one more story, but first, let's read The Raven. Let's read The Raven. Yes, I have. Look, Thaddeus is right here. He's hanging out. And Thaddeus, this is your time to shine. Wait, this is his good eye. This is good eye. The Decameron was banned in Italy between 1497 and 1559, long after Boccaccio's death in 1375. Boccaccio's works, which reflected individualism in a society that did not separate from church and state, were condemned by the Catholic Church. How about that? Inside Out Man, thank you for the follow. Welcome in. Red Sea, hi. Hello. Alright, let's read this poem. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I wandered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. only this, and nothing more. Ah, distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustlings of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood, repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping, tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you." Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore." This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open, here I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. "Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marveled at this ungainly vow to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather then he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, old friends have flown before, other friends have flown before, on the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I, what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of never, nevermore. But the raven, still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then, upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press, nevermore. Then, methought, the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite, respite, and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still if bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore. Desolate yet, all undaunted on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me, truly I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aidenn it shall clasp a sainted maiden whom the angels name Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend? I shrieked, upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above the door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting, still is sitting, on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. and his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. Like, damn, that poem is so amazingly crafted. The rhyme schemes in it, the imagery, the repetition, like it is such a masterpiece. Like, you have to give it drama. You can't read that poem in a monotone, you know? This guy is going crazy with grief. It's heartbreaking. Oh. Nim, stop that. I'm sorry. One of my guinea pigs is in heat and is being a pest to the other. Nimbus, I'll put the pumpkin costume back on you. Well, I don't know if I should show this might go against TOS if she's currently mounting. Yeah, Nim, just go eat some hay. There you go. Eat hay. Hay before humping. That's what I say. Okay. Oh, thank you for the stretch redeem. This was so... Oh my god. That poem is so good. So good. Go badge. Wow. Wait. We've been streaming for over 5 hours. That kind of crept up on me. I was gonna guess maybe 4 hours. You'd end it there? Are you guys okay with that? Did we get enough Poe in tonight? Was that enough Poe? The first, oh my god. Yeah, we had tech issues. True. True. What? What? Hey, Will, oh my god. Thank you for the 50 gift subs. Holy hell. Thank you so much. Oh my god. Thank you so much. That's incredible. That's insane. Wait. That brings you up to 3,000. Holy moly. Hey, Will. Thank you so much. That was so unexpected. Holy moly. Thank you. That's wild. Oh my god. Okay. I'll tell you what. We are gonna wrap things up on YouTube. We're gonna take a few extra minutes on Twitch because I want to do some name traces as thank yous. Put the pigs through college. So let me just say goodbye to the YouTube stream, and then we'll keep going on Twitch for just a few more minutes though. So yes, this was only my second successful live stream on YouTube, but I am excited that at least the tech is cooperating now, and so normally you will be able to expect me to go live on YouTube reading books and stories and such on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday nights. However, this Thursday, because it's Halloween time, we're actually doing a pumpkin painting party over on Twitch. If you're coming across this on YouTube and you're like, well, it has nothing to do with books or why I clicked on this, but I like pumpkin painting, then you are welcome to come over to Twitch, join us there. That is the link to my Twitch stream, also in my bio. And then on Friday, which is actual Halloween, we're going to be doing potion making, our Faolkor stream. But on Sunday, we will be getting back to our normal schedule. We'll be getting back to the story that we're reading, which is The Room in the Dragon Volant by Sheridan Le Fanu, which is great. Don't worry, I will give a recap at the beginning of that reading session to catch you guys up to speed. Although the previous few chapters are up on YouTube in the past, in the lives channel, or tab. So yes, for those of you on YouTube, I will be going live again next on Sunday, but usually it's more often than that. Cool. And anyone who has been watching on YouTube, if you've been enjoying this, even if you are also, you know, hanging out over on Twitch, if you'd like to drop a like, that would be super rad. Hi, Lin Chu. What? Thank you. Oh my goodness. Okay, I am going to end the YouTube stream then, and we will keep going on Twitch for just a little bit longer. Bye, YouTube.